Today on the Crisscross Cinema Podcast, two Wild West contests. But is survival in the cards or the bullets? In Maverick and the Quick and the Dead.
The day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the Crisscross Cinema Podcast, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections that elude the casual eye. Try to spot them along with us. Today, two treacherous tournaments, one gunfighting, one poker. But which one puts on a better show? Maverick, 1994, or The Quick and the Dead, 1995. Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, writer, film editor, and first-time Western director.
Hi, I'm Sarah DeForest, costume designer. Known Aaron for a couple projects now and enjoy working with them, and I love Westerns.
And I'm Mark, whose horn is a particularly deep shade of green.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
I don't understand that. Oh, greenhorn. I'm like, is it St. Patrick's Day?
Today, just as always, we'll review our two films, and then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. But first, Mark, what media has caught your dead eye?
I finally made the effort to see the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Oh, okay.
Which was Guy Ritchie's flop from 2024. And
yeah,
it was entertaining, to be sure. I did have some fun with it, but it was, I don't know, I find that Guy Ritchie's projects, they're a little too. I mean, it was entertaining. It functioned a lot on its charm and its and the action and the actors are really good. But there was just something a little too rote about it. It just wasn't quite as exciting as his early.
And that's the one during World War II with a bunch of motley crew of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to get a bunch of rough, ne'er-do-wells, and we're going to send them on an adventure. And it was one of those things where there didn't seem to be many stakes. You never really worried too much about what was going to happen to the characters there. There's never a sense that any of them were really in real danger, even though they tried to play that up.
Yeah,
it was fun, but I can also see maybe why it flopped. So, how about you, Sarah? What have you been watching lately?
Well, I finally finished watching Fringe, which I
nice.
really enjoyed. And what took me a very long time to start on season 5 of it was I kind of didn't want it to end. And I didn't want anything bad to happen to them. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to watch it yet. And finally I said, I'm going to watch this because I really like this and whatever. So it worked out fine in the end. And I was happy that I watched it. And I kind of did that with season 4 too. Like I just got really attached to the characters, the way things were, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, I had to convince her to keep watching season 4.
So, but anyway, it worked out well in the end. And then more recently, I just the other day finally watched Oppenheimer.
Oh, cool.
And I thought that was well done. I can't remember the main actor's name, but I'd seen him in other things, and he's very good. And then just that time in history, it really seemed like there was so much that they were bringing to the surface about with the communism and everything like that was driving everybody, and then how all these different forces were working together to help get the government, I guess I'll say, get the people on board for what the government wanted. And there's a lot there, I think. So it kept my mind occupied quite a bit.
There really is a lot going on in that movie on so many levels. It's such a very rich movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the performances in it are just so good.
Yeah, really good.
So.
And the pacing kind of never lets up. Like the score for it is always going. And anyway, but.
How about you, Aaron? What have you been watching lately?
Yeah, so I watched Creature Commandos, about 4 episodes of that. Not a children's show by any stretch of the imagination, but it's very well written. Like I like how they introduce each character in their individual episodes. Mm-hmm. So one will focus on I forget their names, but the robot,
GI robot,
and then one will Focus on Weasel, I think is his name. And
then The Bride gets an episode.
Yeah, The Bride's one was really well written. One of my favorite movies is Bride of Frankenstein. So I like it even better than Frankenstein. And it hasn't been for the character of the bride, because I don't know if she has much of a character in that movie, but they did a great job of making a character out of her in the show.
She's kind of iconic, because like whenever you see her picture
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Elsa Lancaster.
Yeah.
It's funny though, the way that they did the tribute to her in Young Frankenstein, where Madeline Kahn was dressed like that. No name, no
Right.
reference. She just was able
Didn't
to show up
even need it.
in the hair, in the wig, and you could just instantly bang. That's the bride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this one's not quite as like that, but I mean, you're right. The character in her character is particularly well done.
Yeah. This is kind of James Gunn's wheelhouse of just a motley crew of morally challenged people like this. Scoundrels with a heart of gold type thing.
Although you get the impression that Dr. Phosphorus is the one outright villain in the bunch.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've seen his episode yet. So.
His episode is the latest one to have been released. I
haven't gotten there yet. So,
but you see it in the early episodes, like when he is fighting Flag. You see it in his the maliciousness, his willingness to resort to violence. He's a very malicious character. It's funny, that one is voiced by Alan Tudyk, and I never thought I'd say this, but I do feel like his voice performance is overshadowed by that of Sean Gunn's, but I think that's by choice. I think that he does seem to be underplaying it a bit, not quite the. You think about what Tudyk has done in other performances. He's done the Joker. He's done, of course, he was famous in Rogue One, and he's always been very distinctive. This one I have to kind of listen for a while. And
he
say,
plays a chicken in Moana.
Yeah, exactly, Chicken Moana.
Yeah.
He's such a great voice actor, and yet he's not really the standout performance in this. It's really interesting.
That's
how
true.
He's underplaying it.
And then the other movie that I saw is Juror Number 2, which it's really good.
I've heard that's really good.
It kind of got buried by Warner Brothers, and I don't know what the reasons for that were, but it's, for anybody who doesn't know, it's the new Clint Eastwood movie.
Oh.
And the premise is, and this isn't spoilers, the premise is he has an accident at night, he hits something, and he walks out of his car and he thinks it's a deer, but he doesn't see anything, so he thought it just ran off. Then he gets called for jury duty, and it turns out that it's for a lady that was murdered and found by this bridge where he hit something.
Oh, wow.
And so he's pretty sure that he's the one that hit her and knocked her off the bridge, but the boyfriend is the suspect who's facing homicide charges. And so it's really good. It's a really, if Hitchcock directed it, it would be an amazing suspense thriller. But the suspense is there regardless. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a lot of people say this about the filmmaking, is it's solid. So you're not going there for any showy, flashy stuff, but the story itself is really good. But the ending lost me. I'm not going to give away the ending, but it's this moral quandary the whole way through, and I just don't like the way that they ended it. And that's as far as I'll leave it. But yeah, it was really good, though. I recommend it. It's on Max right now. Okay. Just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. Now our review of Maverick, 1994.
I like how it opens because it's an interesting callback to perhaps Mel Gibson's most iconic role in The Road Warrior.
Oh, okay.
We're seeing him, walking through the desert. He's dragging a branch. Like he's been recently the subject of a hanging. It's a nice way to introduce a character, I think, because it's like, we're seeing someone who's having survived yet another scrape.
Yeah, well, actually, that ends up happening later.
Yeah. That's
it
what I was
opens with him on the noose.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like he's really gotten himself into trouble this time, and then.
But that very much is the vibe of his character going through this thing of he's in and out of scrapes all over the place.
It gets to it's interesting structure because it makes me think about how it's very much like it's like a series of TV episodes strung together.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, when I was
Interesting, yeah.
rewatching it, because I had taken notes for this, and then I lost my notebook, and I was like, oh no. So I had to watch it again. Oh no, because it's a fun movie. Anyway, but
It is fun.
I took my notes all over again, and I noticed it was very episodic. Like,
But I wonder if that's on
Yeah.
purpose at all, because the original Maverick, like when I was
Is
a
a TV
kid
show,
and stuff,
so-
was a TV show. So I didn't know if because I didn't examine one against the other that way, but it makes sense that it would have that feeling, right?
And yet it's not just episodes. It's
Right.
with each one you're introduced to something new. So like here's where we're going to, learn about Maverick. Here's where we're going to learn about Zane Cooper. Here's where we're going to learn about Annabelle. And so each one of them kind of advances the story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just yet another episode in the life of Brett Maverick. And so I thought it was, I took it as kind of like a knowing homage.
Makes sense, yeah.
We're going to acknowledge this TV show. We're going
Right.
to incorporate that structure into it. And we're going to tell all these little side stories because in order to get to
The final,
the aboard the steamboat, excuse me.
it's a really interesting opening that, like, this is a thing they do often in TV shows that in the 90s, I don't know if this was a very common way to open, to jump forward in the story and then to like a very precarious situation. Like they do that in Mission Impossible 3, where it opens with he's got his wife hostage and he's tied up and he's threatening to shoot the wife if he doesn't tell him where the MacGuffin is. And anyway, then you don't get to it until like
For a while,
halfway
yeah.
into the movie. And it's interesting in the way that it makes you know that this guy's the bad guy, the Mexican guy that I can't remember his character's name, but
You mean Alfred Molina's character?
yeah, Alfred Molina.
Angel.
Yeah, Angel.
Yeah.
So it adds this tension when you see his character and he's not yet the villain, and the question in your head, how does he get
there?
to be the villain?
Yeah.
So
Well, and then the way it used to be once upon a time with TV shows when things weren't that advanced is you'd end the episode like with this cliffhanger, like maybe show him then, on the horse with the noose around his neck. And then, you have to wait a week or whatever
Yeah.
to find out what happens. So kind of an interesting play on that too. in
yeah,
a
that's
way.
true.
I hadn't really thought about that. At this point, it's kind of like it's another way of doing the homage. the
Yeah.
cliffhanger part.
Yeah.
I thought the opening music sounded like Toy Story. It's interesting, but I think I meant to listen to the end credit song again, but I think I don't know the guy's name, but he's a really famous singer that did the Toy Story song. I think he
Oh,
Randy
did one.
Newman.
Yeah, Randy Newman.
Yeah.
I think he
Maybe
did
it
one
was
for the
his
end
music,
credits, so
yeah.
it might have been his. And then, so we start on him coming into town, and then very quickly we get into this poker game.
And I like the way they do the poker game because it gets you learn two things about Maverick from it. One is you learn you discover his skills, but you also discover how he underplays them. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to pass himself off as just this ordinary guy, but you get those skills like when he's being threatened and he just does the quickly you see just how great he is as a quick draw.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so nicely done of how you're gradually unpacking him as a character and realizing he's this really formidable character.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Mel Gibson in that way too is, he's smooth that way and he's funny and you see how he handles the scenes to where he's very believable.
Mm-hmm.
To me is he's like he can go from being like ha 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 to I'm going to blow your head off really quickly.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Like that reversal thing is what this movie goes off of. You're like, oh, he's a coward. Oh no, he's really good. Oh no, he's a coward. Or like it keeps switching back and forth, and it
Whenever
keeps you
it
on your
suits
toes.
him too, right? Yeah,
But-
like how he plays people.
Yeah, but I'm kind of talking about the story in general too.
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah.
like it. you think it's one thing, and then it goes back to being the other thing, and then it goes back, and you're not sure which one it is.
Lots of plot twists in it.
Yeah, lots of twists.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a larger value to that, which is that, and this is something that, you know, we find out later in the movie, there's a huge con being played. And what all that establishes from the start is that at his heart, he's a con artist.
Yeah.
And you get that with the whole, you know, how he gets out of that confrontation with the at the card table, which is he has supposedly this bigger fight that takes place, and he wins, and turns out that he's paid all these guys off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, you know, you would think that a person with the skills wouldn't have to do that, but you also get the impression that he is, you know, he really wants to, you know, make sure it all runs the way that he wants it to run.
Yeah.
And better than risking a battle is you stage something.
Right.
And then that way it plays out that way. And that's how he initially suckers Angel into thinking that, you know, he's not someone to be messed with.
And the way they play this for the audience is that this is one of the twists I was talking about that I didn't remember from when I was younger, is you think it's real that these other guys are after him, and he's just got tons of people after him. Like, he's making Angel mad at this point, and this is the last guy he made mad, and they're after him, and then it's not later till we find out that it was a ruse that he put on.
Well, and then it seems like he's not the only one running the con, too, which you learn more throughout, you know, as each one keeps layering on top of the other. So it kind of becomes like, well, you can't trust anyone. You know, you have to kind of pick who you can trust, but then that person might be going to betray you too. So, you know, you got to have a plan B or like that, to where each one is outdoing the next in terms of the cons.
It introduces these new characters, and then you think this is a trustworthy character, and then it turns out, oh no, this one's a con too. And then, I wrote in my notes, everybody in this movie is a con.
Yeah.
Well,
To one degree or another, that's one of the things that
even the Indian chief.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he's out there.
Yeah,
he's
sorry.
like, well, do you think you could have made 2,000 on it? Oh, probably not. No, but you know that he just pocketed the difference, right?
well, there's one character who's really not, and that's the Archduke. And, and the Archduke, in some ways, I mean, he's the gullible mark that is needed to advance the story.
Yeah.
But it's also probably why conning him is probably the least satisfying. There's
It's
something,
too easy.
Yeah, exactly. There's something really satisfying about seeing con people out-con other con
he's
people.
a great
Right.
source of comedy, though.
Yeah,
He is. He is.
Dookie.
Dookie.
Okay, so in the opening narration of the movie, this is basically the goal of the whole movie, is he needed to know how good he really was once and for all. And so that's
makes sense.
why he's going to the poker game, to figure out
Prove himself.
if he's the best.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he's claiming to do. And the reality, though, is the way that it's set up, if you look back on it in retrospect, is that they were always going to get the money. So it was really about, in a sense, proving that he's the best con artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, right.
Exactly. Can he out-con all these other really good con artists?
But it also involves, and I think this is where the opening scene with the which I misremembered, with the opening scene with him in the noose, it's a great microcosm of the film as a whole. He's always having to stick his neck in the noose in order to get what he needs, and sometimes he has to end up, you know, and so he's undertaking these risks. This isn't, you know, where everything's been gamed out and
Right.
he's always got this thing under control. There are times where it gets away from him, and he ends up, you know,
Having to draw it back in and save his neck, yeah. But then that's the thrill of it for him probably too, right? He's that type of adventurer to where I did it, you know, is the excitement.
yeah, which is part of the charm of the movie.
Yes.
So really, it's about him trying to collect the money he needs, because even though he's preparing to do this, he doesn't have the buy-in. And that
entry
gets to the
fee,
whole notion
yeah.
of poker tournament, is that it's a tournament for $500,000, which at the time was a huge sum of money. And that the buy-in is, I believe,
300,000 each?
I thought it was like 50,000.
Oh.
Which or maybe 25,000. 25,000, which was in itself an enormous sum of money, and how he is in effect, and it's almost like it adds to the challenge. He's having to earn that on his way, and so even though you have these little episodic adventures, they're tied together very nicely by the fact that he is constantly trying to earn that sum so he can get the buy-in.
Yeah.
And then of course when you have
that's all of our Act 2 of him trying to get the money to get there.
Plus, in the meantime, you know, that means he's walking around with that much money minus the 3,000. You're like, that's a lot of money to be walking around with, and all these people after you and everything like that too. So to me, it was like, I don't know what's going to happen next to, drain his money instead of building him up to the point where he's ready to go.
Yeah. And you see that, for example, with the bank robbery scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a little too winky naughty, because you had to know that, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson had that, very, at the time, very big film franchise, the Lethal Weapon series. And so the whole,
Which I did not understand when I was a kid, because I hadn't seen those
Exactly.
movies.
Oh, yeah.
But
it's also
I could tell they were doing something, but I assumed it was just one of the many list of things I didn't understand as a kid. So I'm like, okay, I don't know.
So, I mean, it works because there are other jokes there. You have, Brett Maverick's there because he's collecting money from Jeffrey Lewis's character, and who runs the bank, and so you get the joke of how Lewis is like, I don't have the money, and it turns out when he's being robbed, he does have the money.
Yeah.
As part of the resentment of it, but it's still, again, so much of it functions upon, because they even play the musical key from Lethal Weapon when they're sort of staring at each other like, don't I know you? I'm pretty sure I know you.
And they even have a piece of ADR that they threw in at the end when he's running out, where he's like, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like,
it's like, yeah, we get it.
Yeah, exactly.
You either get it or you don't. But
yeah. And it feels like it would have been so much better if they hadn't really tried. It felt oversold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let it be a little more of an Easter egg or something like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Just have the two of them, maybe like that one glance, not have the musical
Right.
cue, not have the ADR. Just
I guess they really wanted everyone to get it. How clever they were.
And that's kind of where you get the whole. There's a lot of winks and nods in this movie. So, of course, the biggest one being the fact that Zane Cooper, played by
the original Maverick.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, he's a fine addition to it, no question. And you treat most of the movie like it's just a generous nod, which you don't always get in a lot of these movie adaptations. But of course, it becomes key to the plot twist. But
Right.
But we're getting a lot of ourselves here.
So then I think the next sequence that happens, maybe I'm jumping ahead, is the Indian encounter.
Yeah.
Or the encounter with the.
Well, first it's the bad guys,
people
right?
It's bad guys first.
That have held up the settlers.
Yes.
Or not settlers. They're going to start the mission. The ladies, the women and children.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And so then, who held it up? Oh, well, it was these Indians. And he's like, no, this isn't Indian. This is white folks dressed as Indians. All that. Which in the first place, what are those women and children doing out there in the middle of nowhere with how much money it was? $30,000. There's some $300,000. There's a lot of money there, but what were they expecting?
Yeah.
Number one. But so he's going to go and fix it, and then you have the scene with him and Graham Greene and the real Indians, which I just loved.
Yeah, and going after the bandits, I mean that's where you really see the bonding between
The three of them.
Yeah, the three of them.
Yeah.
And we haven't really introduced Annabelle, Jodie Foster's character.
Oh, right, yeah.
But she's on her way to the terminus as well. That she also is in Maverick's situation. So basically, she's a female version of Maverick.
Yeah, con
basically.
artist.
Like, let me jump back a little bit to introduce her of the scene where she comes to his hotel room door, and she's like, I really shouldn't be doing this, and he's like, well, you're just standing in the hallway. I don't think that's illegal in this state. And then she comes in and they smoochy smooch, and she starts to walk out, and he's like, and give me back my wallet.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, and then she does it again and is successful. And that's kind of a metaphor for this whole movie.
Right.
Back and forth.
Yeah. They're each playing their little cons on another. And because they recognize each other early on as, maybe not
fellow
as
con artists.
Yeah, but basically as players.
Yeah. There you go.
That they're constantly testing each other's skills. But so we get to the
bandits.
The bandits, because that's where we get to one of my favorite bits, which is where Maverick's trying to bluff the bandits. Mm-hmm. And so he has he decides he's going to present himself, and he's he has that great speech where he's negging his the people that are supposed to be protecting him, like, the man who'll blow your brains out is Marshall Zane Cooper. You've probably heard of him. I know what you're thinking. He's old, decrepit,
Right.
gums his food and his women, but he can still shoot straight. And then after he was ugly, Annie Bradford, when she was born, she came out backwards and no one noticed. And of course, he's doing this to sort of disarm in a way the bandits, but it's also like these people might not be willing to save you quite as vigorously.
Which actually happens because she's like, "Aren't you going to go out and save him?" And she's like, "A man could get killed doing that."
Oh, he'll be fine.
And then he ends up shooting behind the tree, and then she's like, "Did you
help him?
Did you help him?" She's like, "No."
Yeah. So, which is not early on to the fact that he's super protective of Brett, which it's nice that it's the littlest thing that
foreshadowing a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, it's foreshadowing a little bit, but it's the kind of thing where because it works in the scene, it's not foreshadowing until you get to the end. You
right, and then you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I get it.
But it also makes the negging even funnier because you get the tension there of the old and the new. So
well, and then plus with him and with Jodie Foster, the fact that he's saying this and that, like she's not used to hearing that about herself. Yeah. You can tell. She's like, wait a minute, I'm gorgeous, and I'm such a good con artist and all this stuff. So
yeah, and then once all the shooting is done, she runs up and she's like asking all the guys, "Where's the money? Do you know where the money is?
Yeah,
give me that money." and then he's like, one of the bandits has put on the dress of one of the people they robbed, and he's like, "You take off that dress." She's like, "How dare you?" We get to the scene you were talking about.
Yeah, with the Indians.
Yeah.
So, and I'd like that.
Actually,
go ahead.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to point out, which is that when they bring the money back to the
to the missionaries,
and the idea was that they were going to earn money, a percentage of the money, by giving it to the mission by
going and getting the money back for them.
But you get a sense as to
they had $30,000 and they asked for 10%, so they're going to get $3,000,
which they need for the tournament. But but at the end of the day, we see how Brett is
he can't take their money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they guilt him into it.
They do guilt
him into it. They're kind of cons.
Yeah,
like these ones that are supposed to be the example of honesty
piety
are even
kind
of cons themselves.
But you get the impression that wouldn't have worked on Angel.
Right.
Of course, he probably would have kept all the money for himself. It wouldn't have worked on Annie even. You get the impression Annie would have brushed off, but it works on...
no, it's my $3,000. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is one of the reasons why you can get invested in Brett, is that even though he is doing these shady things, at the end of the day, he does listen to his better angels.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right.
Except for Angel.
And
then
Angel's not the better angel, so.
And then they're like, the bandits, like, if they didn't have those war drums, like, where did those war drums come from?
Yeah, and then you look up
it's
on
like,
the
well, maybe
hill.
them.
Yeah.
And there's this big wide shot that pans over.
Right.
They're all there on the horizon.
Which was funny, too, because the way they first set it up is they said, Indians came. And then he's like, no, I can tell this was white men that did this, but they're dressed as Indians or whatever. And then you see, oh, no, there really are Indians and everything. But then I just love that where,
he's his old pal. He's his old pal.
Yeah. But so the first thing of it too, where he looks up, and so before you even know that they know each other, he's like, does anyone speak their language? Which is so perfect because he has to know first, before he starts talking with Graham Greene, he has to know that nobody else is going to understand the native language.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he won't, so they can talk. And no one does. So then they start into it. And I just love that whole thing where you find out, why they're so dressed up and why the war drums and all this stuff is a great.
But it's also great how he's setting up the con.
Yeah.
Go with me on
By
this.
the way, this is suspense for comedy. Works like crazy. It just,
Yeah, because
like,
you all know what the people in it don't know.
Every line he says is hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Point your finger around at everybody. Look angry.
Look angry, yeah.
Yeah, wave your spears around type of thing, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant scene. And I just love their back and forth too. Like I think they're both really good comedians.
Yeah. I feel like Graham Greene just doesn't quite get the he's never got quite
the actor of the chief, by the way.
Yeah. And I mean, I know he was nominated for an Oscar for Dances with Wolves, and he's widely respected, but you don't often
He doesn't
see
get the credit that he could.
you don't often see him outside of playing the Indian role.
Right.
And unfortunately, when he does, it's, I mean, you
Should
watch
have
him
more comedy parts. He's
He's
great
got
at comedy
great
too. Exactly.
timing. Yeah.
But they always kind of slot him in that role. I mean, you watch him in a film like Atlantic Rim, which is awful. There's a reason why that film was targeted by the Mystery Science Theater, 3,000 people, and you get the impression that he took it. Okay, he probably took it for the money, but he also probably took it because for one time he wasn't being asked to play an Indian.
Right.
When he can do so much more of that, and what I love about his role in this is that it's in effect a commentary on that.
Yes.
Because he's a Native American who's basically doing Indian for pay.
Right.
Which gets
then he gets to have all these great little lines too, like, go ahead, shoot the Indian. Oh, is that legal here? Yeah, they've been doing it forever. Like those types of things where you're like,
Is that illegal? Yes. He says that they want a sacrifice and that they want a human sacrifice. So he's like, he's going to go off and do it. And he's like, I could die happy right now because Annabelle's all sad that he's leaving.
Yeah.
And so he takes him off to the Indian village. We find out is not exactly
right.
Yeah. But we find out that he's actually is going to go on to continue playing a sacrifice, and that gets to how he's going to get the money he needs.
Yeah,
because he's actually there to speak to Joseph about the money Joseph owes him.
Right,
and Joseph's like, well, his cons haven't been going very well lately, so they're kind of.
He got paid in rubles.
Yeah,
yeah.
He got to the conversion. So,
and then he's like, "You've got $20,000." Can I see it? And then he checks it out and it's newspaper. And he's like, what?
He's like, no,
she stole it from me. I was going to go die. And he's like, no, I've got it. And so like even the Indian chief that he thought was his friend is conning him too. All of them.
Although that was more just about pulling a joke on it than it was actually trying to come out of the money. So,
well, later on though, Oh yeah.
Well, he does run that wonderful.
He cuts. He only tells him half the amount that he's giving him, and then he halves that again.
Yeah,
that old movie trick.
But I love the way he gets the money out of the Duke, the Archduke, which is that he says, "Okay, we're going to go ahead, and you're going to have to shoot the Indian." Of course, Maverick doesn't want to get shot, so we're going to go ahead and give you this arrow to do it.
Yeah.
Which of course is a trick thing.
Yeah,
and then when the Archduke is angry about it, he wants his gun, and it's like, well, okay, I'll sell it to you for extra money. So he's like he's trusting Maverick, and this is I think it's the kind of thing you see so often with friendships, which is that, okay, I know I'm putting you at risk, but I know you well enough to know you're probably going to get out of it. Okay,
yeah.
So, but I guess if you die, I get the full money then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win for Joseph.
The hanging is the midpoint, but is there anything else before that?
Well, not really. I think he leaves. He's on his way. He gets intercepted by Angel and his men, and we haven't really covered this, but that after Angel's initial encounter, he gets a mysterious telegram saying that Maverick cannot make it to
be allowed to play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when he makes it a point to chase down Maverick, and then in a very Bond-esque way just kind of leaves him to die on his own
with some snakes on the ground.
Snakes on the ground, and then Maverick, which takes us back to the beginning of the movie, and then the branch breaks and Maverick's able to get away. Again, the homage to.
Well, and then the other thing too is like at the beginning when he says, please, if there's any way, for me to live through this, I'll be good, or that type of thing. And then you see that he does, the branch breaks, and that's what saves him. And so he gets another shot at it because it looked like it was going to be the end for him, there for a minute.
Yeah, but then
the snake bites the horse or scares the horse, and the horse goes, and there he's.
I love that. That, I guess, prayer that he does, that God, whatever I did to piss you off, like that's kind of his I don't know. Mel Gibson is perfect for this role.
He really is.
He is.
Yeah, really good.
He's really believable both in terms of the action side of it and the humor side of it.
Yeah.
He's not awkward either. It's very smooth. He really is such a great fit, and in that sense, he really is a great. You also buy him again. You already said they're spoiled, but as James Garner's son.
Yeah.
Because Garner had that too, where he had that easy charm,
Right.
but he also had the physicality.
Yeah.
And you need both for a role like this.
Yeah, so we go from the hanging, he gets away from that, and I think
You don't see how
I'm
he
showering at this point. So.
you don't see how he gets out of the noose and gets out of the branch, but you next get to the landing, and that's where he's the steamboat's there, and he has the money, but he encounters Annabelle, and she still is short, and that's when they pull the second con on the Duke.
Yeah.
That's where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm with BIA, and
Yeah.
we
I
just
heard you shot
talked.
an Indian. Yeah.
And then he conveniently accepts a bribe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you see the Duke going off in the little boat, and he's kind of mopping his brow.
Yeah,
He's like,
he
I
got
gotta get
away
out of
with
America as
it.
quickly as I can.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But that's how Annie gets her cut and is able to participate, which is interesting because it implies that, yes, there's the romantic element, but it also implies that he doesn't see her as a threat. So
Right.
it's okay in a way.
He
It's
kind of wants her involved in it too.
yeah, and it's allowing him to con her out of her money.
Well, true. Yeah, very true. Because even though there's that attraction between the two of them, either one would sell the other one upriver
Yes.
in a
Yeah,
heartbeat.
It's kind of every character in this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I love when they reintroduce the Duke on the boat. He's like, "Oh, it's something, but I like killing." Anyway, that guy, I don't know.
They definitely make him someone that you don't mind seeing getting conned out.
Yeah,
I think it's one
but
of
in
the,
a comedic way, like he's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
in a way this fits totally with it. You think
Yeah.
about movies where the con is of someone who's like, I think of like Ocean's 11. Where they make Andy Garcia's character out to be someone who you don't like because he's ruthless and he's vindictive, and so you're more than happy to see him get ripped off.
Yeah.
Right.
And you do that with the Duke in the fact that he is a person who engages in homicide for pleasure, but it never feels out of place with the movie.
Yeah.
And that I think speaks to how successful they've managed to maintain the tone throughout.
Okay, I want to do a big jump back real quick for just one scene. We missed the stagecoach chase.
Oh, right,
where,
right. Yeah. That was
where
huge.
the driver dies and he's got to get up on top to save them, and he gets to he does the, I forget, there's a name for it, but
We jumped from one pair of horses to the next.
one to the next, and then anyway, but he pulls back on the horses right before the cliff, and the momentum of it throws him off the edge,
Yeah.
and he's right on the edge of the cliff, and the guys come up to the cliff, and he's like,
He's going to help
no,
him up.
he's
No.
mad at them because none of them helped, or neither
Right,
of them
right,
helped.
right.
He's like, I suppose you guys were helping me because you wanted me to get more character or whatever.
Yeah,
and they're
right.
like, yeah.
That's it.
And then he pulls up his gun and he's like, never help me again or something. And then
And then right away
they
he
walk
needs
off,
their
and right
help.
then he starts slipping and he's like, help. He's like, what was that? Help. And he comes closer and he's like, what? He's like, please help me.
Which then it goes on to inform the later scene where he's negging them in front of the bandits.
Yeah.
Because he's still frustrated about how that all played out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so jumping back to,
Okay.
we're
Or the
on the
tournament.
steamboat
Riverboat,
now.
yeah.
The tournament is just about to start. This is something interesting that I don't think many people notice about like sports movies and like poker and whatever type of game movies, especially chess movies. It's very montage. Like you don't see full games.
Oh, well, yeah.
You like
Yeah, you can't.
the closest thing I can think to that is Casino Royale, where they show several games, but if even that is like just a few hands each game.
You save it for the climactic confrontation.
Yeah, exactly. So it starts with a big montage of just who's
before,
winning each game. And,
before that, you have the introduction of that, where we discover the terms of this, which is that each person's paid in $25,000, and so the kitty is $500,000, and that it's being guarded by the famous Marshal Zane Cooper, and there's this great joke in there, and it's legendary that this was actually not in the movie, where Cooper has his gun and he pulls it out, and he puts it back in, it drops to the floor, the ground, and he's still talking, and James Coburn, who's the Commodore, who's organizing all this, is like, you dropped your gun. It's a testament to these pros that you have a accident like that, they both go with it, and it ends up becoming one of the more humorous parts of the movie. Which also then plays nicely into the idea that, which we've seen earlier, he's old, so therefore he's not a threat, even though we realize he does still have enormous skills. But it makes what happens a little bit later in the movie such a nice heel turn, because you really don't see it coming. Even though it turns out there's more to it than that. But the idea of it is being just kind of this amiable guy who's just happy playing this role. Maybe he is a little, he has lost a step or two, but it sells it very nicely in terms of how you get into it, and also how people are kind of relaxed and enjoying themselves. And it's a nice way of introducing what this tournament's supposed to be about, even though it's not really what it's about.
Right.
Yeah. And I just saw James Coburn in Sister Act 2 yesterday, and he's great in that movie. His comedic chops are just really good. But then they set up the rule of no guns at the tournament. And he's like, the only 2 guns that are allowed are these ones on my hips.
And that's where he does the famous dropping the guns.
Yeah. And then...
which also I think is a nice misdirect, because you assume at some point someone's going to get a gun by taking it from him. And while it is true that during the climactic confrontation at the table, Maverick does use one of Cooper's guns, it's not as though it's actually stolen from Cooper or something like that.
Yeah.
Then we get the montage.
We get to that montage, and basically you just see a bunch of cards moving and a bunch of chips and a bunch of people saying, I got this hand, and then a bunch of people weeping like, oh, I lost. And you see who wins each tournament is basically the through line that you're following of who are the winners that are going to be at the last table.
Finalists,
And then
you also see them catching the cheaters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The great scene with Denver Pile. And, of course, the rule is that if you are caught cheating, you're going to get thrown
overboard.
And catching people with guns.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we get to the final table. And I think before that, they say, okay, 30 minutes to the final table, which if they say a time limit, that's going to be a suspense thing.
Yeah.
And it is, because Brett and Annie go off and they
have relations.
Yeah, they make out at the very least. And then, of course, Annie gets out, but Brett finds that he's trapped in there.
In this room, yeah.
Yeah, he's got to, finagle. And, of course, it's this whole idea that, again, someone does not want him at that table.
Yeah.
And it's going to be by hook or by crook. But the final table, it's Annie, it's Brett, it's the Commodore, it's Angel, and... Is it just the 4 of them, or is there a 5th?
I don't remember. Might be one more for a minute.
I thought there was a 5th who ends up losing.
That's what I thought.
But he almost doesn't make it to that final table.
Exactly.
He's down to the last second.
They're doing the countdown,
and he's got to swing outside his room to get to the walkway, and then he right as they're counting down to the last second, and I think even just like right on the last ding of the clock, they're like, okay. He's gone, and then wait, he bursts through the doors, and then here we are at the final table. This is our Act 3.
And you start with a montage there
final
too.
Thing. Oh yeah.
You have to have a montage with the final.
Most of the game is done in montage, and then we get to. She loses, and there's a setup that we missed at the beginning. That through the first hour of that game, he said he's going to lose, and and then. At the end of it, he's like, what do you think I was doing the first hour? I was learning all your tells. And then she's like, I didn't play with my hair. I didn't blah, 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 all her different tells.
I didn't do any of my tells. I didn't shuffle my cards. I didn't pull my hair. I didn't even flick my teeth. And Maverick says, "You held your breath."
Yeah.
And what to me sells it is the fact that when Maverick says that, and the Commodore and Angel are kind of like,
Yeah.
we know such
Nod. Yeah.
And then she has that great line, "Well, I'll just pretend I was playing with someone else's money." And Maverick
May
goes,
not be too hard.
Yeah.
"Exactly."
Which I caught the thing of he lent her the money
Yeah.
for that, but also there's the thing of she's a thief, so all of her money is
all of her
someone
money
else's
is
Yeah,
someone
money.
else's.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
So, but then you get to the three-cornered showdown between Angel and I keep thinking there's someone else there.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not good at keeping
So,
track of a bunch of characters.
It's Angel, it's Commodore, and it's Maverick, and of course they all have these great hands or potentially great hands.
Unrealistically great, but
Yeah,
it makes
yeah.
for good drama.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole idea, is that when you're having the epic showdown, it's going to be, it's going to be, one for the ages.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and so you get, I can't remember. I think Angel has like a full house, and Commodore has four. Of a
I think
kind.
Angel has a straight, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't know
somebody
poker
had,
rule.
yeah, straight.
Yeah.
But Commodore has 4 of a kind with 8s,
Yeah.
and
I like how he
Yeah.
does it too. I have
Yeah,
two.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, so he does I have 2 small pairs, 8s and 8s, and my brother, when that happened, he's like, "Oh, he's a silly boy."
But he's playing it, he's kind of being super cool about it.
Yeah.
But then and then of course, Brett does it. And of course there's this whole thing that we were talking about, which is how Brett can sort of make things happen, supposedly. Or the idea that you can kind of will what you want out of life. And so has this possible royal flush, and it's 10 Jack, Queen, King possible. There's that one card which he hasn't even looked at.
Yeah.
And he won't look at it.
And
And
he
it's
won't
driving
look
him
at it.
crazy.
Yeah,
and
Angel in
it's set
particular.
up earlier. He's looking in the mirror, and he's got a deck of cards in front of him, and he's like,
Well, he said he did it ever since he was a little
"Yeah,
kid,
I've,
too, right?
I've done this ever since I was a little kid. I had this idea that I could
Cut the deck.
cut the deck right at
And
a
know what
certain
the card
point
would be.
and make it the card you want it to be."
Right.
And
And it builds the tension
Yeah.
so nicely.
Yeah, because it has to happen.
Yeah. And I think part of it is that you get it with Melina. And I remember what it is that it starts with the 2 pair of the Commodore, the 8s, the 8s. And then Angel beats that.
yeah,
And because you see Commodore's face drop, and then you get to Maverick doing, and Angel's tense because he's got to know if he's finally beaten Maverick, and it plays nicely where you don't see it, and he holds it up, and then he exhales, and it looks like he's disappointed,
Right.
and he just throws the card, and it's the ace,
It's so
and the music is perfect.
Yeah.
Nice slow motion shot of
and then
the.
Angel pulls out a gun, and his 2
Yeah.
associates pull out guns.
You got the
and-
nice slow mo
yeah.
gunfight.
And then, which of course is not just Cooper, who Cooper kills the 2, and Maverick kills Angel, and the Commodore's up in arms. Your security's worth nothing. Everyone's got a gun.
Got a gun, yeah.
But Maverick's won the tournament, and now we get the presentation of the prize money, and Cooper's there, and he's got it in his hand, and he says, "This is so much money. I think I'm just going to take it." And it's the heel turn.
He's so perfect at the acting for this
Yeah.
too. Like his I mean, of course he's the original Maverick, but
Right.
like just his charm about this, like being the bad guy with charm, basically.
But he
He's
also
perfect at
he
that.
sells the determination.
Yeah.
I cannot think of any villain roles that Garner did.
Well, in Atlantis, he basically does the same thing as this one. As he's the guy in charge, and then at the end he turns out to be the bad guy.
I don't remember that one, so I don't think I've never seen that one. I don't think. But then yeah, he's getting away, and Commodore's like, "Get my gun," and he's gonna blow apart Cooper, which is interesting because when you find out in the next scene that this was actually an arrangement that the 2 men had,
Right.
he is basically preparing to not quite literally stab Cooper in the back, but he's going to shoot him in the back.
Yeah.
And then, of course, who is it that saves Cooper but Maverick?
Right.
throws off the aim. Oh, it's just money. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Which you can actually buy, given the nature of the character, is that he's kind of an easy come, easy go. These things happen, so it's not like.
And he also says, and I missed this the first time, I learned I got what I came here to get, which is he wanted to learn if he was the best.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah.
And then you get the parting where Annabelle's says goodbye, and he does the card thing again. It's the Queen of Hearts. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, this is the end of the movie. But then we see Cooper by the fire, and who shows up with the Commodore. And Commodore, since he couldn't shoot Cooper in the back the first time, he's going to shoot him now.
Yeah.
Get the money. Yeah.
And,
This is where the double crosses really start to stack up too.
Yeah. And it actually implies that the film's going to go on for longer, as they're all going to start hunting each other down too. But of course, Maverick gets away with money, leaves Cooper and the Commodore to fight it out, and then, of course, we get the great scene that's followed by the great scene in the bathhouse.
Yeah, bathhouse.
Yeah, where Maverick's at his ease, and he's got Cooper sneaking up behind him. Yeah, guys, it's so nicely done, because you think that, because now that you bought into Cooper's heel turn, you figure that at the very least he's going to take the money, if not shoot him, and. Then there's that great line, and I'm trying to remember the line where he's kind of Maverick's trying to be philosophical about it. He says, "My old pappy always used to say," he's been quoting his old pappy with all these real nonsensical
great setups
sayings
throughout the whole movie. Yeah.
But there's no more deeply satisfying religious experience than cheating on a cheater. And then Marshall Cooper goes, "I never said that."
And then
You've been misquoting
the music's
me.
all tense, and then it switches to.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize just how this whole, it's just been one very elaborate con and very nicely done, and now they're all relaxing, and they succeeded, they've won, and now
Here comes Annie.
You've been misquoting me all your life.
Yeah, exactly. But they're both in tubs enjoying hot baths, and Annie shows up, and she's going to go from conning to outright theft. So she's going to, take the satchel of money, and she gets away. She actually, how she figured out all along, how they do everything the same way. They draw the same way, etc.
Even sing the same wrong words to Amazing Grace.
And then they both go, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And then that Cooper's kind of berating Maverick for being so dumb as to let her get away with $500,000.
Right.
I let her get away with $250,000.
Yeah.
He has some more in his boot.
Boot, yeah.
And then it's like, I don't know why I didn't do that with all the money. Oh, yes, I do.
It'll be awfully
He
fun.
had to be able to put his boot on.
Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
See, the idea that
yeah.
it's the chase, it's the con, it's the adventure that it's all about.
Yeah, let her think she's getting away with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was setting up for a sequel or if it was more just going with the vibe of the movie of like it just. This is not the kind of movie that you give a resolution to. You're like, no, it's going to keep twisting back and forth, and it's going to go like this forever.
Yeah, just because he won the money doesn't mean he's done conning, or any of them are done conning. They still probably have years of it left, because they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. It's also, I think, a final nod to the whole episodic nature of it, is that there's always the next adventure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not done now that he's got $500,000. Is that he deliberately gives himself more adventures because he's that's how it works. There's always the next episode.
Yeah, and then they end the credits on a rendition of Amazing Grace.
Mm-hmm.
So a really upbeat gospel choir version of it
With a freeze frame of Mel Gibson's big grin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
we missed the part at the end where he's like, "Okay, how did you get that card?" Like, he's like, "You're not going to believe me," and he's like, "I'm your father, or I'll believe you."
Oh,
and
yes.
he's like, "Magic."
Yep.
Magic. I believe you.
Well, that's the thing too. Earlier he said, when I was growing up and I was doing it, and I would tell my dad, and he never believed it.
Yeah.
So then he finally says he believes it.
That's great. They lace it out throughout the whole movie of him talking about his dad, and then that's how you do that. I'm a victim of this too. Well, not a victim, a perpetrator of this screenwriting crime of, with a twist, you don't want to give too much of it away, but it's really the opposite of that. You need to set it up properly before you get there, and then once you get there, it feels earned, and it's something that exists in the audience's head before it happens. So you're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, that's our review of Maverick. Now our review of The Quick and the Dead.
So The Quick and the Dead, love this movie. I'm so glad that I got to review it with you guys. So it starts out with the lady. Her name is Ellen, the character, but she rides into town, the town of Redemption, and basically it shows the town and the people, and you can just tell that it's had some rough times. And then
it's got a very ironic name.
Yeah, I know, exactly, but perfect in a way too. You know, it just, you don't understand it really until the end, maybe why. But so she's coming into town and kind of seeing things, but you don't know yet why she's there. But gets checked in, gets a room, and then exposition.
Well, before that, as she's walking down the road, the coffin maker guesses her height.
Oh yeah.
5'8". I know I'm right.
He's a man who knows his trade and has evidently had a lot of practice at it.
Yeah, well, you can see why. But so it's laying out what's going to be coming up in terms of, not really sure about this town, but there's something wrong there. And then just, starting to see some of the characters, and it'll start to show us, why people are coming into town and all this. But just introducing her and walking down the street and everything like that and taking it all in.
And she walks into the corner saloon, which did you recognize that saloon?
I did not.
That's the same one that's in
Time Hunt.
Oh,
I was
they
so,
built
so,
that
so
for
excited
this movie.
When I learned for Time Hunt that we were going to be going down there, because I love this
Ours was
movie already.
much less dressed than that one was, but
it's a great
it's the same building.
Yeah,
so.
And they built it for it. And then, well, I won't say yet, but other aspects of that town they built for this movie too.
Yeah, which are not there.
That's
for
what I was going to say.
That we
Don't
won't
spoil
talk
it.
Yeah. Well, we are in spoilers, but yeah, we'll get there. So the first person that he meets is the tavern keeper, and he sees her walk in, and he's like, "The whorehouse is next door," and she kicks the stool out from under him.
Yeah, because he's up on the stool trying to fix something, and just assuming, because she says, "I want a room," and he's like, "Yeah, whorehouse is next door."
That's actually one of the nice nice themes in the movie is this notion of the lady as this, how she becomes like this feminist icon, and how you see it with the way that the women in the town
start to look up to her.
Yeah, and identify
especially
for
the
her.
tavern keeper's daughter.
Yeah.
So,
and at first she's kind of like, in some of the scenes, she's rejecting it almost. She's like, "Go worry about your own business." But then after a while, you can see that it all kind of coalesces to where she is the hero.
Yeah. She recognizes that is a power that she can
has.
Exploit.
Yes.
Given what because it's clear that she radiates determination throughout this movie. And one of the things that I always thought was it's both frustrating, but also at the same time it works, which is the fact that her determination to do what she wants to do isn't quite enough on her own,
right?
Because so much is and it's a great metaphor about how the world is rigged against her.
Yes,
and how the reason why they're there, it's all rigged. There's the outcome is going to be determined by Herod,
and the rules can change at any time. Is the other thing we learn
exactly. And so it's like, even though she has the skills, even though she has the determination, given that all is that all that is what it is, she can't just do it on her own.
Right. She needs to enlist other people's help. Yeah.
And
which we're alluding to the gunfighting competition that will be coming up.
Well, and just even the townspeople too. She does need them, to be there for her.
Just we were referencing like rules and I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
but so then we're introduced to all these players that come into this saloon, and
And then there's going to be this gunfight competition.
yeah, and like the way that Maverick, everyone's a con in that movie, everyone's a killer in this one.
Very true.
Yeah. You get, you get the kid, you get Ace Hanlon, you get Scars, you get they all these. So many of them have these great nicknames, but they're all these very filthy, grim, well dressed for the most part, but very foul looking characters because of what they do.
And that with Scars too, I'd forgotten that in the beginning. Besides riding into the town, the first thing that you see her doing is she comes upon him and he ends up the worse for it, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you, and remember that out in the, I can't remember what he's doing. He's digging. That's what he's doing. Digging. I assumed looking for gold or treasure or something, probably not his, but he found out about it, and she puts him out of commission and leaves him chained to the remains of a wagon and stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna kill you, and then he comes into town, and it turns out he is in the competition because that plays into it too, like that whole. It's a lot of vendettas here,
and the rules are basically designed to cater to that. Any combatant may challenge any other. No challenge can be refused. Every contestant must fight once a day, and a fight continues until the contestant either yields or dies. So this is a place where you can definitely measure your skills and also maybe take out your enemy.
Yeah, and the whole bigger premise for this that makes it where they can be doing this in this town is there's no law in town. They show right when she walks into town, the first building that's there is the marshal's
the remains of it tumbled down. Yeah.
And so he's basically the law in town, and whatever he says goes.
Yep.
He being John Herod, played by the legendary Gene Hackman, who is so good at exuding menace and charm.
Oh, he's so evil.
Yeah.
He's so evil.
But he's smooth about it.
Yeah.
He's basically the same as James Garner, but like turn the menace up to 11.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's this interesting subtext of, why is he doing it? Because it's not as though he already controls the town. I think the money that he's putting up for the prize is his. You get it in his confrontation, I think, with the kid, played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Which is that he's getting old.
Yeah.
And I must confess, the older I get, the more I can appreciate this, where you're like, you can't deny that time is happening, but at the same time, you want to demonstrate that it hasn't, that you can still do, you're still as great as you were.
It hasn't affected you.
Yeah.
Well, and he enjoys it too. You can tell in the different kind of sadistic things that he does, where here's a situation and he could handle it this way, but no, he's got to make it like 8 times more evil, so
Which one of the most sadistic things he does is he's got the preacher on a chain, and he keeps chaining him up places.
And puts like a glass of water like a little further beyond his reach. Yeah.
And my favorite character of the movie, played by Russell Crowe. So
Court. Yeah. So he and of course that's and Court's inclusion is really key, because Court was at one point a member of his gang before he took over this town. And
we don't know that quite yet, though. We just know that he's a preacher. But
but we find out that also that Court was really the one person who's, and I'm really getting ahead here, the one person whose skills he regarded as equal to his own.
Right.
So really, this whole thing is about him proving he can gun down Court. And as we find out later on, he's not interested in it as a fair determination.
Right.
Regardless of what happens, he wants Court dead.
Well, and he says, I always wanted to fight you. Like, even when they were working together, it's like, oh, that's a strange dynamic, for partnership or whatever. But
but it gets how to Herod is just, he has to be the best.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to be the king of this little town. He has to prove he is still better than every other gunfighter out there. And what better way to do that than to have a tournament, and not just a tournament where you time people on quick draws or measure their accuracy. No, it's the where life itself is on the line,
Right.
and you get some money if you win. Well,
Yeah,
the money's
incidentally.
the money's the
Entry fees? Or no?
no. It's the carrot. It's the design to draw
Oh,
the
yeah.
gunslingers.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
So he needs
for
that
sure.
there, but it really
To draw in the best,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So it has to be a substantial sum of money, and that of course is supposedly why the lady is there. She's
She's here for the money. She
Yeah.
keeps saying,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? Yeah.
even though we find out that's not why.
Right, right.
And they do a great setup of. They do so much in this scene. It's so good. They introduce Gene Hackman and Russell Crowe's characters in the same scene.
Mm-hmm.
Of he brings him in on a chain, and he like hangs him up on the noose with the chair right there, and he's wanting him to join this competition as they're putting the names on the board, and that board is still there in the
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
saloon.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I don't know if you can see it in Time Haunt. I don't think
because we moved it to the side.
Yeah.
You can see it in just a picture of the set, though,
yeah.
without anyone.
They
on it.
usually have it up. But
Yeah.
then so he's got him on this chair and he's shooting the chair, trying to convince him to join the tournament because he's pled or not pled. He's taken an oath of nonviolence.
Yeah, he's gone from being a member of this gang, which had to be ruthless if Herod was in it or running it, to where he is pledged not to. He's now supposed to be man of God, and in a sense, it's part of what Herod is doing, which is first he is undermining that pledge, undermining that commitment, showing that Court is not better than him. Not
Right.
just not better than him as a
Yeah,
gun.
because Court turned his back
Exactly.
on the life of crime, and here's
And
Herod's
Herod
still in it.
Yeah, and Herod's saying, "You're not better than me. I'm going to drag
Right.
you down.
Right.
I'm going to show that you're still just like me."
Yeah.
Which makes one of the greatest tensions in this movie of
Yes.
is he going to
To draw.
is he going to shoot somebody like
Yeah.
that and they do a really good job of that. That's the kind of thing you set up in a screenplay and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to follow through on this. But then
Yeah, it's so good.
it makes it really well. They pull it off really well.
Yeah, and this is really. I mean, Russell Crowe was not really a big name when he did this. I mean, he was
Right.
already an established actor, but a lot of his Beautiful Mind, Gladiator, that was all still in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was
that's
not
right,
the
yeah.
box office draw at that point. That's true.
He was still just getting. I mean, to the degree to which there's box office draw, it was Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman was coming off his Oscar from Unforgiven, and
Then Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know how big he was even yet because he's pretty young.
Is this pre-Titanic?
This is pre-Titanic
Okay.
by about 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah, Titanic really was the
This
What
is
tipped him over the edge?
about
Yeah.
it's before all these guys blew up.
Yeah.
So.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really riding on Gene Hackman's status as a legend, and that really was kind of peak Sharon Stone because she had done Basic Instinct I think 3 years previously,
Right.
and then she never. I mean, this film didn't do as well as everyone wanted. I don't think.
No, and I never saw it
Yeah.
when it first came out, but when I did see it, I thought, wow, this is, amazing. And then learned later that she actually produced it, so I'm sure
Yeah,
it
she
came to
did.
her and she said, this is a role
This was
I want
her
to do.
passion
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the director is Sam Raimi, which I didn't realize until I looked at it because this movie is like a cartoon,
Yes.
basically. The visual style of it. There's all these Dutch angles, lots of snap zooms and dolly zooms where you feel like it's simultaneously getting closer and further away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
you might have said at one point, "Hey, this person was really impressed by The Evil Dead and Army of Darkness,"
Yeah.
and then no, it's
And
the
then
same guy who did.
I look
Evil
at it
Dead
and I'm
Army of
like,
Darkness.
it's Sam Raimi. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Everything
Anyway,
fell into place then, right?
Anyway, so in this scene where he's got him on this chair and the noose, we also set up the marksmanship skill of the lady
Yeah.
as she shoots the rope right as the chair breaks.
And also really perfect foreshadowing, which we don't find out until the very, very end of like this whole life experience that she had that is why she's there. So, you know, it's got to be hard for her as her character to be in that situation again. You know, when, I mean, I don't want to say now because we're not even near that, but just the whole thing with the noose, the stool, anything like that, you know, where you have the chance to save someone or not.
And this is also, so after this, we get introduced to the kid played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is impossibly young looking.
Yeah.
Who nonetheless, he makes it clear that, you know, he thinks Herod's his father.
He looks like he's 16.
Yeah.
Which I think also underscores the whole, you know, age thing. Because, you know, there's, as, you know, as bad as it is to feel old, it's even worse when you have that hot young person roaring up behind you who's looking to take your title before you're ready to give it up, and the fact that it's his son.
Yeah.
It's just really is, you know, kind of, which he never really acknowledges.
No, even at the very end, I mean, even at the end of that gunfight between those two, he's still denying it.
Yeah.
You know, which is terrible.
Yeah. So, but you get the, it implies, it's really nice because it also gives a sense of how many agendas are at play here.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes it so it's not just a straightforward story of Herod and court or Herod and the lady.
Right.
It's, or even any sort of romance between court and the lady, which thankfully they never really go into. But it's the fact that there are all these other things at play, and they're all developed so nicely in the story. There's never a feeling that any of them is extraneous, and there's never a feeling that at the same time that any of them is underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, and you have, for Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he's always trying to prove himself to Herod, and Herod is not acknowledging him, which makes it worse, you know, but it's what drives him, his character.
Yeah.
Of just, you know, wanting a father and some of those storylines.
Yeah, and arguably, you know, the father figure should have been court, but then that's not the kind of person the kid wants to be. He wants to be the
gunfighter.
Yeah, which gives you a sense of the reputation that Herod has.
Yeah.
That he is feared and respected.
Well,
for
and he
his
has
gunfighting
the
skills.
mansion, and he has the clothes, and he, you know, that smoothness and everything, and so Leonardo, you know, is wanting to step into that role.
And so for one of the first gunfights, I don't know if this was the first one. Actually, I don't know where this takes place, but as he's walking up through the street, all the women and girls' reactions to him, I'm like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio playing himself.
Yeah, right. But then, you know, with the other gunfighters there too, you don't see everybody, I think, ultimately wants to challenge Herod in terms of these random gunfighters that came in just to get the money because Herod's the best and everything like that. But you don't see the other gunfighters there trying to react that way to Leonardo's character, which he would probably like eventually to take on that role too. I am the best. He's always saying, wow, did you see how fast I was? And that type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, he's looking for people.
One of the times that he does that is great, the way they do this, because in a gunfight, of course, it's the tension of who's going to go down. And they show this, you hear the shot, and then you see him fall on his knees, and he's like, is it possible that I'm that fast? And then it snap zooms out, and you see the other guy fall down.
Right. Yeah, because when you see him go down, you're thinking, oh my gosh, did he get wounded, you know, or anything? He's just like, no, I'm just that amazing. He's, celebrating himself.
Again, Leonardo DiCaprio playing himself.
Right.
Yeah. So, which, I mean, he gave him a bit of a pass on because it was early in his career and didn't have quite the same range necessarily.
But people picked up on that, and
it's good casting.
Took hold, right? Yeah.
And that apparently was Sharon Stone was behind that too.
I did know that actually. Yeah. She wanted him for that.
For salary. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it gets to just how much, you know, while Sam Raimi gets credit for the directing, it really was Sharon Stone driving.
It was her project, yeah.
And yet I think it's also a testament to her that, unlike so many of those projects where the actors like to make it about themselves,
Right.
she makes it a point. And I mean, this cast is so stacked with heavy hitters. Not necessarily big name stars, but just like great actors with a great presence. So you've got Pat Hingle, legendary actor who's the bartender.
Okay.
You have Lance Hendrickson as Ace. You have Tobin Bell. I mean, he's not Jigsaw yet, but I mean, he's already a well-established character actor. You have Keith David. I mean, these are all Gary Sinise is in a small role.
Yeah.
These are all heavy hitters.
Small, but very important role.
Yeah. But anyway, there were a lot of really good people, or people that, like some of them, Russell Crowe and Leonardo DiCaprio, where they're going to become these superstars. That she was able to get all these people together for this film,
along with character actors who I think about the roles like the showdown between Ace and Herod, which is this great thing between these two actors where you have the arrogant Ace and you have the contemptuous Herod, or you have the bit later with Keith David, his character. He was the hired gunfighter. And how he comes in, gosh, what was his name? The Clay Cantrell,
right?
And how he's kind of playing this very smooth, relaxed person because he's a pro, and how that's handled. I mean, it's just, it's like there's not a bad performance in this movie.
Yeah. Everybody did a great job.
I'm thinking about
for sure.
Spotted Horse, where he's the whole thing where he's like, I cannot be killed by a bullet, and he opens his shirt and he's got all these all these bullet things, and I think I just realized that's why he's called Spotted Horse, because he's got all the spots.
Interesting.
And he's like, he's saying, I got shot 2 times in the leg. I got shot even 1 time in the head, and it hasn't come out yet. And anyway, all this stuff. And I'm thinking about it in this speech that I'm giving it, and the speech that he's giving, and I'm like, well, if you get shot, you lose. So it's not about dying, but they do a very good job of, once it becomes you have to kill the other guy, that's when he becomes.
And of course, the person has to do that is we'll get to his core. The one performance I think that you could, there's one actor in it who doesn't have the range, and that's Sven-Ole Thorsen. And it's great that he's in there because he's this famous.
Which one is that one?
He's the Swede.
Oh, gotcha.
And Sven-Ole Thorsen has this. He has this legendary status in Hollywood because he serves in so many movies as Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
And so you see him, and there's this enormous, I would say, affection for him in Hollywood, and so he gets inserted in things like he's Richard Dawson's bodyguard in The Running Man.
Oh, okay.
And he's got the physical presence for it, but I think there's an understanding that he's not going to play Hamlet in anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So they just have him in this role where he's just, I am the greatest gunfighter in all of Sweden, and I'm the fastest gunfighter, and how but he does such a great job with that, with his physicality. He's a very great physical actor. He's not going to be great at declaiming lines. So they're like, okay, we're going to use you to your strengths, and you add this humorous element to it.
Yeah.
Which DiCaprio just plays off of so well. I feel like we're getting to the gunfowls, but
so basically, it's hard to talk about this because all of Act 2 is gunfights.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As this might be a little crisscross, but we don't actually get to the competition till Act 3 of Maverick. But all of Act 2 is all these gunfights for this movie, and we start. I think they realize they have this problem. We've got all these gunfighters, an entire board of them. Mm-hmm. They start with this montage of it's over black, where all these that's another one of the things where I'm like, who directed this? Because it's very stylized, and
where they'll have something and then they'll cross out one of the names.
Yeah, but when they're having the gunfights, they're standing on black.
Yes.
And they it's like in a black void, basically.
Yeah.
All these gunfights are going down, and we see it like a comic book of these,
Right.
all these gunfights happening, and that person lost, this person lost, this person I've never seen before lost. And then we get all the side characters out, and then
Yeah.
we bring it down to a
the
core
main-
crew of
yeah.
the ones that we've introduced.
But you also have a bit of development because you have to have in that first round Herod breaking court in terms of giving him, and there's that great preceding sequence where Herod's getting Court the gun, and the kid for some reason is selling the guns, and so
I think it's his shop, right? I mean, that's what he does in the
okay.
town. That was my guess. Every time I've seen it, it's like, oh, he owns a gun shop because he's always taking out the gun and going, well, this is this and this is that. Like,
Yeah, he owns the
That's
and
what I thought.
The bed that she sleeps on, which is his bed, is made out of dynamite, which he's like,
which is a great,
he sleeps on it so nobody steals it.
but it's
Yeah.
also a great
Yeah.
metaphor for how he's this explosive element to Herod, who's really threatening to upend his world if he proves that he's superior to his father. Alleged father. But you have that great scene where he's like laying out all these great guns and what he thinks of them, and then Herod's like, "Oh, Court doesn't need any of that. Just give him the oldest, cheapest gun you have."
rustiest old piece of junk you have.
And he
yeah.
gets one bullet at a time too.
Yeah.
But you get that great scene where
Which again, the tension for that is
Yeah.
just perfect. Of like, he doesn't have a good gun. He's given all the negative things,
and
he's almost a secondary main character.
and he's insisting that he will not.
He's
draw.
not going to shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get that great scene where you have the moment, and you hear the gunfire, and you have Court. He looks down. He's got the gun in his hand. And he's looking at like, how did that?
What did that? Yeah.
Yeah. After he's won the
shot,
gunfight.
yeah.
Yeah, after he's won the gunfight.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like his old instincts come back. That's very Man of the Gun-ish. Okay, I'm going to do a pitch for Man of the Gun here.
Good job.
Yeah, Court's character is very similar to the main character of Man of the Gun.
Say, Aaron, if I wanted to see Man of the Gun,
Yeah,
where would I
if
go?
you want, it's here on this channel. If you want to say, well, if it's on the podcast, go to Transcend Entertainment on YouTube. But yeah,
But then you get a bit more development between the rounds. So you have the first round, which is largely montage, but we see how Herod's already. It's this implication that Herod knows Court better than Court knows himself. But then you have that. You have the meeting between Herod and Clay Cantrell, where it's clear that Clay has been hired by the townspeople to kill him, and that is and Cantrell thinks highly enough of himself to where he's not worried about
Right.
Herod.
He never even thought he wouldn't make it. Yeah.
But this is where you get the at the start of the second round, you get the first rules change, which now all fights are not just to the pain,
it's to the death.
They're to the death.
And this is, by the way, is the midpoint, which is a great midpoint because it ups the stakes.
Yeah.
Makes everything life or death. Every one of these matters now, and as it ramps up, it's going to be fewer people that are. Yeah,
And
it's great.
It also shows that the rules can change, because up until then it seemed like it was very like, okay, these are the rules, and then you're watching with that in mind that those are the rules, and then it's up for grabs.
And of course, this is where you get that where the first fight is between Herod and Cantrell, and this gives him the chance to do this great confrontation where you see just how good he is, where the professional gunfighter is no match for Herod. And then after he shoots Cantrell, he gives this great monologue where he goes, "I'm confused. All I hear from you, you spineless cowards, is how you can't afford, how poor you are, how you can't afford my taxes, my protection. Yet somehow you managed to find the money to hire a professional gunfighter to kill me. Where's all this money coming from? What am I to think? If you got so much to spare, I'm just going to have to take some more off you, because clearly you haven't gotten the message. This is my town. If you live to see the dawn, it's because I allow it. I'm in charge of everything. I decide who lives or who dies. Your gunfighter's dead. Old news."
You get the role.
It's
Is this your monologue?
What?
Okay.
You got the role.
You got the role.
Yeah. Oh. I could possibly. I feel as I'm reading, I feel like I'm not doing justice to how well
Yeah,
Hackman
no
does it.
way
The
with
combination
Hackman,
of
yeah.
anger and contempt.
Yeah.
And yet in
And-
control of it at the
Yes.
same time.
But
yeah.
you also get the sense from that he is that's what's motivating him. He's terrified of losing control.
Yeah.
He won't show it. But here was this challenge, and he put it down very efficiently. But nonetheless, there's this realization that clearly people aren't getting the message. He is in control.
Well, he's got to rub their face in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, then somebody could actually challenge him
But if you don't,
if they're not living in terror.
if you're really in control, do you really have to rub people's faces in it?
No, but
So-
he's got to make sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I would think anytime you get, say, you're the head of the mafia or whatever, you're always looking to see who's coming up behind you, wanting your role. You know,
And that's
Yeah.
that's really the kid. But at the same time, the townspeople who don't want to play this game, they just want to be rid of him. And that's why they think that they can, bring in Cantrell to do it. And of course, we see that even the best gunfighter money can buy is no match for Herod, which really, I think, ups the stakes later on.
Yeah. Before this turn to the lethal fights, right at the midpoint, she goes to dinner with him because she's been
Oh, yeah,
invited
yeah.
to dinner.
Yep.
She has a gun under her skirt, and she pulls it out under the table, and this is a great suspense scene where it's like he doesn't know that it's happening. You can tell by the way he's talking and all of it. It's really well alluded to that she wants to kill him and stuff like that, and he doesn't know that. Ironically, right under the table, she's got a gun on him, and then
well, and then
yeah.
she sees that that's her chance, but she just can't act on
yeah,
it.
she can't do it.
I should add that before we get to that, there's in the second round, that's when Court faces off against Spotted Horse. And I love how it's another example of Court's decline, or in terms of his sacrifice of values, to where so he's facing off against Spotted Horse, and of course Court wins, but this being Spotted Horse, he doesn't die.
Yeah.
So Spotted Horse is picking himself up, and he's like, no bullet can kill me, type of thing.
Yeah.
And Court is begging for another
bullet. Yes,
Yeah,
so good.
oh, it's so great.
good.
So he's gone from I won't shoot. I
This
won't.
is another suspense thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's so well done. But he's
And the kid that
I love
he's
that
getting it from
character
is
so
the
much.
blind
It's-
character, and
yeah.
he's digging through looking for a bullet.
It's like he's getting fight time while Spotted he's pulling out his
Right.
gun, and but it's what gets me most is the fact that Court has gone from this principled man who's embraced nonviolence to
He's just at the.
I need more.
desperate-
I need
yeah.
more so I can kill. He's
Yeah.
begging so he can kill.
Well,
Yeah.
because he knows it's that or he's going to get killed.
Yeah.
Right? You can't stop at that point.
But remember, in the first round, he was.
That's
yeah.
right.
But
yeah.
that's how far he's gone now. He's gone
changed.
from
Yeah.
he's
He's
corrupted.
yeah, he's brought him to his limits, and
Yes.
this is, and I it's kind of fair at this point because it's about survival.
Yeah, that's what
but-
I was going to say. Survival changes
But,
probably
yeah,
how you look at
he's-
things. You have it go from where at first Court and the lady, they were both kind of like maybe could work together somehow. You might have a feeling, or at least they're a little bit out of the fray with the rest of them. And then you see him through what Herod says about Court is he used to be just like me. And she says, really? Is that true? And yeah, and then she doesn't want anything to do with him because,
she doesn't
has,
believe in redemption.
well, and she's so against Herod. It's like, oh, if you were like that, no. And so,
Yeah.
Given what Herod did, took away the man who mattered most to her,
yeah.
and who was not just in the lady's mind the symbol of masculine virtue. He was a symbol. He was a
town,
lawman.
Yep. He was the one that was keeping the town from being what it became.
Yeah.
But so then you have them like, okay, they're not working together. They hate each other. And then, how is that all going to play out? Because like Erin was saying before, she comes to a point where she realizes, oh, I need to have some people work with me. if I'm going to have a chance at this.
And at the same time, Court realizes he needs an anchor.
Yeah.
That alone, neither of them can stand up to
Right.
Herod. He's just too corrupt. He by his rules, and that's just it. They also have to change the rules.
Yeah.
In a way.
So I think we're at the point where we might be able to take it gunfight by gunfight if we remember the order. There's the kids gunfight that comes later on. So we've got the one with Court and with Spotted Horse. Mm-hmm. And then there's one where he forces her and him to fight each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was another one that was simultaneous to that of...
Well, there's the one with the guy when it's raining, and he's upstairs with the barkeeper's daughter, and then the lady sees what's happened, and the girl comes running down, and then she's like, it's you and me now.
Yeah, that was the second round. In that was when it became all about the kills. So, I mean, I'll be honest. The one that we've kind of glossed over, which is one of my favorites, is when Herod is facing off against Ace.
Yeah.
That was that was the first one, and that's a great setup.
It is.
He's supposedly the best guy of all of them, and it's kind of the thing where in Star Trek, if you want to set up that somebody's a big bad character, you have them attack Worf, because Worf's the biggest one, but it turns out that this guy's a fraud. And
that's part of it. It's not just that he's a fraud.
Yeah.
It's that he is borrowing off of Herod's reputation. Mm-hmm. And it's that dialogue they have beforehand where Herod says, "Mr. Hanlon, I want to ask you about Indian Wells. That fight really take place?" Mm-hmm. And Hanlon's going, "Sure did. As true, you gunned down 4 men. 2 with my left hand, 2 with my right. See, the truth is I'm good with just as good with either. You must be the fastest gun in the West. That or the biggest liar."
Right.
And then Ace goes, "It was a pity you weren't there to find out." And that's when Herod says, "Oh, but I was, Ace. You see, I was the one who really killed the Terrence brothers. I doubt if a lying little chicken ass like you was even in the same state." It's almost, you get the impression that maybe he personally invited Ace because he is, again, he's trying to protect his reputation. He's trying to protect it by demonstrating he's still the fastest gun. And he's trying to protect it by killing this scumbag who is trying to ride on it by claiming credit for Herod's achievements.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Well, it's like a cat and mouse thing, too. He knows already, like when he was setting him up for that, he's saying, "Oh, yeah, tell us about this and everything." And what a big braggart he is. Yeah. And he's like, no.
It's kind of, it gives me big vibes from the other movie that we covered.
Unforgiven?
Yeah, Unforgiven. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he's talking to I can't remember.
English Bob.
Yeah, English Bob in the prison.
I must confess, when I was trying to recollect, I was trying to find, did he actually say the whole, where he was just kind of sneering at him, and I realized, oh no, that was the line from Unforgiven, where he's like the duck of death, kicking him, and bag of hot air type of thing. So I get the impression, as great as an actor as Gene Hackman is, he really didn't have to push himself in new directions for this role.
No, not at all. And I can't think of any more gun. Well, okay, let's get back to him versus her gunfight. Mm-hmm. They've got guns on them of, "We're going to kill both of you if neither of you shoot." And he's yelling at her, "Shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me." She doesn't. And he's like right at the edge. He's got the gun up, and he's like, "Okay, shoot me. I'm going to shoot you. Shoot me." And then he's like, "Oh, please shoot me." And then I can't remember how that one ends up.
Well, she gets shot, right?
Supposedly, supposedly.
But it's not, because they already set it up ahead of time.
Is that the one where she dies?
Where she's acting...
Okay, so that's later.
That's much later.
So the kid dies before this.
Yes, the kid dies before.
And that's where you get him talking about how he's fast, he's only getting faster, and you've lost your edge, and the kid's basically in his mind he's already won this fight based simply upon the numbers.
Yeah.
But they're both taunting each other too. You know, you can see that neither one's going to let the other one have any glory out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that, and this gets to, I think, why he's denying that he's the kid's father, because, I think fathers don't like to admit that, but at the same time, you want your son, your child to be better than you. Mm-hmm. And you would think that at some point, if he could accept that, he would at some point say, here, son, what's mine is yours.
Yeah.
But
I don't think Hackman's character has that in his nature.
And you see that by the simple fact that he refuses to acknowledge that the kid is even his. Yeah. He is not going to hand on the mantle to anybody. He does not see anybody who's worth handing the mantle to. And if that means gunning down his own son in broad daylight in front of everyone.
That really shows you what his character about. And
exactly.
Although
that sets him up for Act 3.
There was that little moment where he's trying to tell the kid, don't fight me. Earlier on, he's like, don't go there, because he knows he will take him out.
And also, it's also the acknowledgement that deep down he does know that the kid's his son.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to do it.
Right.
But if it's between the life of his son and his reputation and standing, Herod demonstrates his reputation and standing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great writing of just, it shows you the character, what the character values most.
And it's arguably the most villainous thing this character does. Of all the many villainous things, shooting, what would you say is even more villainous?
Oh, there's one coming up.
At the very end. And I was just like, he's more villainous than that. But anyway, I'm not going to say yet.
Okay, we'll get to it.
So I think their fight, the two of them, is probably the intro to Act 3. And I don't have many notes on this. So.
Well, it's the idea that it's.
Oh, okay. She rides out of town at this point.
Yeah, she's had enough.
This is the second act down point.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so and we've had this character in the background of the doctor in town this whole time, and he's introduced at the beginning. As she walks into town, or the night that she walks into town, there's a big celebration going on in town, and there's the classic movie thing of someone being in the crowd, and then somebody walks in front and they disappear thing, and it's like, who's that guy?
Yeah,
he's going to be important.
Yeah,
he was connected to. Well, first of all, he delivered her. Yeah, and.
So you're learning that she's actually from there. You're learning a little bit about her past. They have that scene at the Boot Hill where she goes and she's looking for her father's, except you don't know necessarily yet that it was her father, but looking for somebody's grave marker. And he said, no, it's not here. They took it down. And then you learn that it was the sheriff and those types of things, but you don't still see how it all fits together yet. But you're starting to see these glimpses, like her as a little girl when Herod and his guys are riding through town.
That they keep on yeah,
and the doctor pulling her aside, and then her breaking loose because she's concerned about her father, who is the sheriff, and so all these things start to play together. But it starts to show a little bit more of why she's there, but not the whole story yet.
It really does, though, make that moment where Court shoots her all the more tragic, because it's that she's being denied that even just the opportunity, the chance to revenge her father.
Right, right.
And that that's done by Court is it doesn't really help it at all, but it really does make it.
Was he one of the people that was riding through town with Herod? I don't know that it was specifically him.
No, he wasn't in the flashback.
That's what I thought. No. I didn't think he was.
Because she's basically the same age as her.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have been
He would have been a little kid.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a little bit older, but then I don't think in the flashback there's any sense that there was somebody that young with him.
No.
And I think that from a storytelling perspective, it had to be, because otherwise she would have been as vengeful towards him, almost as vengeful towards him as she was towards Herod. So I think they needed to have that remove.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
when
so-
she learned that
yeah.
that Court had ridden with Herod, that did turn how she felt towards him for sure. Like there's a lot of hatred there from her towards Herod. You can just feel it kind of seething there.
So the big reveal at the end, it's heavily implied that she's responsible, or he was, Hackman's character was responsible for her father's death.
Okay, but we're not there yet.
Well, we are there.
Okay.
When it's raining, and that's where we are. The scene where it's raining in the cemetery.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you find that out, and you see them riding through town, and you see in the flashbacks and everything him being hung. Because so first they drag the marshal out of his office, and they take him down to the thing, and they have him, hanging, and her being concerned for her dad. So I think it gets us to there,
And
right?
then,
and so you understand.
keep going. Just go to the end of it.
Okay.
We're there.
So to me, like, not only does he have his guys go and grab her and she's going to watch while they hang her dad, but then Herod gets this even more sinister, to me, idea.
Sadistic.
Like the most sadistic thing that I could think of anyone doing is like, oh, wait a minute, I have an idea. You can save your dad. All you have to do is shoot through the rope.
Yeah.
And then he'll fall down and he won't, just the whole setup of it. And to this little child, I mean, she is really young, and they put the gun in her hand and they're like, what chance does she have? Okay, she could miss altogether, so he hangs. She could shoot through the rope and he lives, but what are the chances of that happening? Or worst possible outcome, which is ultimately what happens, is she ends up shooting him dead.
Well, there's one other alternative outcome she could have done in a worse movie, which is she could have tried to have shot Herod.
I guess maybe, but she's not there in her mind.
Exactly.
She's this
That's-
tiny, shivering little child who somebody put a gun in her hand and said, "This is all you have to do to save your dad. It's easy."
And that's what makes it such a good movie, is the fact that they don't play that silly action element of it. It's instead she takes the choice that's in front of her, does her best, and ends up with the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and then the fact that Gary Sinise's character has forgiven her. It's okay, honey. All you have to do is just try. Don't even worry about it. He knows what could happen too, and but the fact that anyone could do that to a child, that to me is the most sinister, sadistic thing in the movie. But
and there's an implication that even if she had somehow done that, it wouldn't have helped, because we find out later that he still is not willing to play by the rules.
Right. So he still would have killed him.
Yeah, probably anyway.
Yeah, and her and whatever. But just to put a child in that position.
But you also get it from the fact that after Cord duels the lady, Ellen, that Herod has his men break Cord's right hand.
Yes. No, but not on purpose. He found out, so the guy that broke his right hand, he's like, let's see how good you are now. But then the next morning when they drag him out, because he was the one that was watching him overnight, I think. So then when he comes out, Herod is like, what happened to your hand? Oh, I did it. And he was like, get going, and he shoots him. But then that he doesn't like it because he wants to win against Court, with Court being the best. So he's like, oh, now we both have to shoot left-handed, and
Although at the same time, he makes it clear that even if Court wins, he's to be killed.
oh yeah.
So he's not interested in
When it's to prove he's the best, and then
and that's where I wonder to what degree that the man was not maybe not acting on Herod's instructions.
Right. He'd been his henchman for long enough.
Yeah,
and he thought he was doing a good thing.
Yeah.
But
oh, okay. I thought you were saying that Cord broke it himself.
no.
Because that would be
the
consistent with his
bodyguard.
character,
Oh, well,
and that would be a great.
Yeah.
That would be a great addition to this.
No, they have him in that scene where it's the middle of the night, and so they're just guarding him, and then the guy gets this idea is he's going to break his hand. But that was not what Herod had in mind.
I mean, I think Herod wants to win in a straight match, but
Yeah.
what matters
But he'll
most,
still have the advantage.
yeah, but what matters most is he wants to, and he knows he gets his advantage because even, and this is something we haven't really mentioned, but we've implied, is that every one of these duels, everything in this town is being supervised by these long-coated men with
Yeah,
these
up
rifles
on the roofs. Yeah.
who are always menacingly cocking their Winchesters
Yeah.
to make it clear that they're prepared to shoot down anybody
Right.
who defies Herod on a moment's notice.
And so then, to me, then the brilliant thing about it is that they totally go under the radar to defeat Herod, because you can't do it on his level or by his rules.
Yeah,
So you got to be a little
the
smarter.
system's rigged, so
Yeah,
you can't do it
yeah.
through.
You
what
got to
he's
change the
doing.
rules. You
Yep.
gotta- just as Herod's doing.
And
So,
then,
Exactly.
are we there yet?
we're there.
Boom!
Yes,
The
boom.
dynamite goes off.
But
And
the great
yeah.
thing too is on that movie set that when you go there now, so there's the saloon and there's other
Yeah,
buildings.
those buildings aren't there.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
The mansion is gone, the clock tower, all that, because they
When I
actually
watched
blew
this
it up.
movie, it confused me because I'd been there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, those buildings aren't there. What's the deal with those buildings?
And then, of course, the
Yes.
process, this also takes out all of Herod's men.
Yeah.
So now it really is just, for the first time, Herod and the person he's dealing with, who happens to be Court. And you have that great line from Court about, new rules, John, from now on, all fights are fair.
There you go. Yeah. First time you ever heard that rule.
Yeah. And that, of course, that's after actually the remaining henchman Court kills off first. But then it's not Court who's going to confront Herod. It's going to be Ellen. And so she is, after all, going to get her
Yes.
the confrontation that she's written into town for.
Which the way they set up for that is that when she gets shot, it's the doctor that checks and says she's dead, who's definitely on her side. You've already seen her ask the blind kid about what types of India ink do you have, all colors. So you know that she's not really dead, but they get her out of there and they won't let anyone touch her. So she is able to come back then.
And because she was out, she was able to rig everything because nobody
Yep.
was paying attention
Yep.
to her. And then Ellen announces herself to Herod by throwing her father's badge.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
It is.
It's a charge object. Okay, I'm going to
Yes,
get on a
I
soapbox
thought of
real
that
quick.
too. I thought of that.
Brian McDonald, this is a Brian McDonald term, a charged object is like the top from Inception might be one of them. That's more of an idea thing, but usually it's an emotion. So this badge, it was her father's badge, and so we see it multiple times in these flashbacks throughout the movie. And so
And
it makes it
symbolizes
really
what Herod took from her in
What-
taking her father.
yeah,
I think too.
basically, and it's got that emotional charge of what happened to her father. And what's cool about it is you can take that and just throw it at him, and instead of her saying "you killed my father,"
Boom!
it's
right
boom
there.
right there.
Yep.
And they've got that amazing low angle shot of looking past the badge up at Herod. Instantly, right away, you know that he knows what the
Yeah.
deal is, and
Yeah.
yeah. He's had this curiosity about her throughout the movie. Of
Yeah.
like,
Who are you? Why
who are you?
here?
Why are you here?
Yeah.
What's your whole deal? He gets the sense that there's some kind of vendetta that she has, but it's like, who are you? I don't know you.
Well,
and
and
then
probably
he
because he's
realizes-
done how many things, how many times.
Yeah,
That he's that bad of a guy that he's not going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that time, or
that
whatever.
one little
maybe
girl.
too.
That,
Yeah.
I gave the gun to.
Yeah.
So
The Colonel Bison moment, if you will. It was just Tuesday for me.
yeah,
But we get, so now it's going to be Ellen and Herod, and they fight, and Herod wounds Ellen, but Ellen shoots him right in the eye.
well, okay. First of all, she hits. It looks like she's the only one that gets hit, and then there's this awesome shot where
You see
see
daylight.
the daylight going
Yep.
through his chest.
Yep.
And making this ray of light, and you're like,
Oh, she got him.
and then she shoots him right in the head, and he goes flying
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah.
Not very realistic, but I guess
No, but what a great.
satisfying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Great
I
imagery.
don't like the whole revenge thing and killing off the bad guy in the most gruesome way possible, but it works.
It feels
for what they
earned
were
in this
doing.
one.
So
It feels
Yeah,
really earned
he
in
was
this.
so evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there was a good thing about him, really, his character.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't care about the town. He just liked the power. And
Didn't care about his own son. Didn't
Yeah.
care about, I mean, not only does he kill a girl's father, he traumatizes her and makes her feel the guilt of having done it.
I'm just saying, if I were to film this movie, I wouldn't have him go flying.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
well,
I would just
yeah.
have him get I'd probably end it on that shot of the ray coming through him, and he just falls to the ground and is unspoken and
yeah, yeah.
no gravestone, no anything. He's
Yeah.
just
Leave him for the
bye-bye.
buzzards. Yeah.
Anyway, but so yeah.
And then she gives the badge to Court and says, Laws come back to town, and she rides off.
And that works for me, too.
Yeah, why would she want to stick around in that town?
And that's the classic Western thing of you cleaned up the town, now head out of town. So it knows its tropes. It's interesting that, well, I'll get to that in Crisscross, which we are there. So that is our review of The Quick and the Dead. Now we go Crisscross. Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA. So let's dissect and deconstruct. Compare and contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
Crisscross.
I just want to say before we jump into it, is interesting to me is how close in time these were both released, just
Yeah.
within a year of each other. So that kind of gives some underlying DNA right there. Yeah.
Maybe it was in the zeitgeist at the time.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
I think in that sense, it really fascinates me because, I mean, for most of my life, I keep hearing about the death of the Western. The Western is dying. And granted, it's not as big as it was, in the, the golden
40s
age of
or
Hollywood.
whatever, yeah.
Where every movie was a Western.
Right.
Yeah. But when you can, I mean, it has this persistence to the point where you do have these films that are very closely tied to each other. Maybe one of them or both of them was able to get funded and supported more easily because of the success of, say, Unforgiven.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's still with us. We still see these westerns, and it's nice that they were able to do it. It also shows the range that was still possible. How within you have this very neo-noir style western and this very light, bubbly western.
Yeah.
And they both coexist, and they both
work.
yeah, and they've
Yeah.
both been very successful. I also just forgot this is also around the time that Tombstone and Wyatt Earp came out.
Aren't those earlier? Quite a bit earlier.
I think Tombstone's 93 and Wyatt Earp's 94.
Is that right? Okay.
Or maybe
All
Wyatt
right.
Earp's 95.
Oh, maybe because I never saw either of these right when they first came out. That's why. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
So I'm sure maybe someone will say, oh, there's actually a renaissance of these films like the early 90s.
Sure.
But I see it more as, the genre is plugging along, maybe not as big as it once was, but it's still there. So.
Well,
Yeah.
because it's iconic, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's part of who we as a country are, because of the history of Westerns and Hollywood and all that stuff, our heroes have always been cowboys and all that stuff too. So
And it also
it's
shows
right there.
what you can do within that genre.
Yes.
I mean, Maverick's not quite as over the top as, say, Blazing Saddles.
Right.
and there have been darker
But
westerns.
it's got an edge to it, though, that comedic edge.
It does.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so the first crisscross thing is pretty obvious is the competitions. So one's a poker competition, one's a gunfight competition.
Well, and one of them is very much more lighthearted and comedic and everything, and the other one is much more serious.
Yeah.
But they both have good elements, to them. Like even in The Quick and the Dead, there's comedic elements, but you need that for a little relief and stuff. But it's definitely a heavier film.
One of the things that I really was struck by as we were discussing it when we were doing the recaps was how both of them really very interestingly use the episodic structures to develop the characters. So whereas you have the various adventures in Maverick, which introduce us to Brett and then Annabelle and then Zane, in Quick of the Dead, it's the confrontations that do it. That's when we see who these people are. There's a bit of a buildup, but it's really the gunfights themselves where you see the kids' braggadocio really on full display, or you see Quart's gradual devolution to where he embraces the fact that he is a gunfighter once again, and you see the lady gradually becoming Ellen in terms of how she's working her way up to that to achieve that personal redemption, and it's how they use those mini stories within the overall movie as the key to development, rather than having, say, something more expository.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And for Maverick, it's like this clothesline. It's an opportunity for you to see the bantering and the back and forth between these three characters.
Something else that stands out for me is the representation of women in it, and this is much more overt, I think, with The Quick and the Dead. And I mean, I think this may have been what drew Sharon Stone to the project in the first place, but here we see women taking a more at the center stage of the story. It's not just the lady, but also you have I can't remember the character's name, but the one who's kind of falls in love with the kid and her experience with it. But you also have within Maverick Annabelle, who is not just your typical damsel. She is a very much of an active, agent who's treated as an equal by the people she's dealing with. While they acknowledge she's a woman, and there are certain, things that come with that. At the end of the day, she's sitting at the table with the boys in the final confrontation, and nobody makes a huge issue of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something you would see in many films prior to that point. I can't think of many major westerns prior to the 1990s that gave women that element of agency. I mean, some movies are practically devoid of women. I mean, I can't think of a major female figure, for example, in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or
Yeah.
But here, I mean, not only are they central characters, but they really are, pivotal to plot, and they're treated, as equals in terms of that. And I think that is it really opens up the storytelling possibilities. I don't think it would have been quite as impactful had the lady been a man in the
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Like it's kind of how you can't gender swap Bond. You couldn't gender swap this character. It's about her being a woman.
And about her becoming a strong woman, and stepping out of traditional female roles, and how the townspeople are looking to that and saying, oh, who's this type of, it helps them all, I think, all the women being inspired by her character.
And the way they demonstrate that most is with the tavern keeper's daughter.
Yes.
Like she's fawning over her the whole time. And it's a great character moment where she's like fawning over her after the first gunfight she wins, and she's like, I want to be just like you type thing, and it's like, no. I don't want anything to do with that. Yeah, grow up is what she says. Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to say too that I think the costumes were amazing in both of them. It was really great to see just that level of attention to detail.
In case you didn't listen to the first part, Sarah is a costume designer. So,
but especially like with Alan and the other characters too, there are a lot of really great costumes, I thought, in The Quick and the Dead that really added to the people's character. They weren't just like your traditional, all right, it's a Western, so, you wear a jacket and a suit and a three-piece, whatever, It was so much told about the characters. Who they were, and the costumes, the makeup, everything, I thought.
Was the costuming different in the two movies? Because, and this is just because I'm not as attentive to those details, but was the choices for the costumes, were they darker in Quick and the Dead? Or was that just a function of the lighting and the setting?
No, could be that for sure. I mean, you definitely had like the townspeople, there were certain elements like where it was really dirty and, things like that. But then if like just even Ellen's costumes, not when she's dressed up for dinner with him, that was just whatever. But like her jacket that was so cool and embroidered and like a long duster, like all these different things where I was like, you don't see that, level of attention maybe to where it did add to her character. And then the other would be Ace in there, like how elaborate his clothes were. And then too, at the end, like after he's down, they strip him of everything down to his long johns, because his clothes were so cool and everybody's like, that's cool. I want to be like that, or whatever. But like I thought in that one, there was really good use of characterization, through the costumes. And then in Maverick, it was just, everything was gorgeous,
It may also have been an element of storytelling to say that for Ace, that the flashy clothing is superficial, just like
True.
him.
Yeah. Yes.
And that,
without it, he was nothing.
Yeah. And it was all stripped away by his death.
I felt like the clothing for Quick and the Dead was much more exaggerated.
Yes.
Like kind of the same as the cinematography.
Yes.
So,
I can go along with that for sure.
I wouldn't call Maverick.
It was showy, flashy Western, a lot of Maverick.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it accurate.
No.
But it's very classy Western.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she's wearing like a gown the whole time.
Yeah. No matter what they're doing.
That's kind of their characters, though, less than it is the setting.
That's true.
But
still, like when they're on the riverboat and everything at the end, and you see like this whole group of people. I mean, there are a lot of people in those scenes, and they're all dressed impeccably. It's nice to see it taken that seriously, I guess I'll say.
And the costuming, I think, also goes back to that point that I was making earlier about the women, because you're right, I hadn't really thought about that. Annabelle, she's always dressed as a woman, but it's not as your typical, late 19th century American wear. She's always dressed for the saloon. She's dressed for the table. So it is a role that, so she's not dressing as a man would in the way that the lady does in Quick and the Dead, but she's definitely so it's not inappropriate in that sense. It's appropriate for her setting, but the fact that she's dressed as that all the time is what really stands out.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, you didn't go out necessarily if you're of a certain level of society dressed in just whatever. I mean, like even when Annabelle, at the end is getting ready to leave and she has on like a pale blue dress and everything like that. It's not like low cut, like she would wear maybe at the poker table or whatever. It's proper for going out in the street and stuff, but as a lady, she's never not a lady, I guess.
Yes.
From sort of a societal ranking type thing.
And you think about how when you have that one time where the lady in Quick and the Dead wears a dress and it looks so unnatural on her.
Yeah.
And part I think is how Sharon Stone plays it. She plays it like she's not comfortable in it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that must have been on purpose because it could have been great, But
whereas with Jodie Foster, her character, she always seems to be that's her uniform.
Yeah. Right. So. Right. And always each one different too. So she knows what looks good on her as a character. You can tell that's part of her persona there too.
So I wanted to discuss the structure real quick, because I remembered as a kid that the poker tournament was a bigger part of it. Like it's kind of like in Home Alone where all the traps and stuff don't happen until the third act. Same thing for this one. The poker competition doesn't happen until the third act.
But there's a lot leading up to it. They're always trying to get there and have enough money and all that.
It's a very sharp division, though, of like he's making the money to get there, making the money to get there, making the money to get there. Okay, now, even though that is the entrance fee for it, it's like the final level of a video game, basically. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
But for Quick and the Dead, it's the entirety of Act 2 is the competition. And then, of course, Act 3, even though the competition goes off the rails, it's basically the whole movie. And I'm curious to see. Well, I'll say what I think, but to see what you guys think of why that is. For Maverick, it's very light on its feet, and it's not really about anything. Like
Right.
it's not a revenge tale like Quick and the Dead is. It doesn't have some bigger message. Like I was kind of disappointed by watching it the first time because I'm like, there is no message to
Oh.
this.
Well, it was fun, right?
It's
It's
a
a
fun
romp.
little
Yeah.
It's a fun little
Lighthearted
romp is
entertainment.
what it is. Like the clothesline of it is getting the money to get to the tournament, but it's not really about that. It's about having that clothesline so that you can hang off these fun
Stories
escapades and
characters.
the character
Yeah,
interactions
get to
between
know
them.
them.
Yeah. And then by the time you get to this tournament, you know thoroughly these characters.
And you're invested in them.
Yeah, invested
Yeah.
in them. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there. The biggest thing about Act 2 for Maverick is character investment. It's about the journey, like having a fun time to get there.
Yeah. One of the things that stands out that it just occurred to me as you're mentioning is that it's funny how Maverick is built all around misdirection.
Yeah.
It's all these cons,
Yeah.
all this misdirection.
Very true.
And works for the audience as well. And yet the most effective misdirection in either of these movies is the one in The Quick and the Dead.
Yeah, the final one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the lead up to it, because
Yeah.
you start the film, you're expecting that it will be between the lady and Herod,
Right.
and you're prepared for that, and then you have that, the fight between her and her in court, and it really does. It's not just tricking Herod; it tricks the audience. You don't
Yeah.
see her sneaking off. You
Right.
are prepared for her to be dead, and that it's going to be about court. In this case, we would have featured it in one of those. Remember the podcast we did involving The Place Beyond the Pines and Psycho?
Oh yeah, a character handoff.
Yeah,
That would be really.
It felt like there was a character handoff
Yeah.
happening there.
It would be really interesting to see a character handoff in the third act. I mean, I guess that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
but-
is that you thought you were getting a character handoff, and yet it turns out that was a misdirection for you, so that it's more effectively done than even the whole Zane being
The father.
the father,
Yeah.
because in a way they've been alluding to it throughout the
Right,
movie
right,
in
right.
terms of the banter and the all the little touches which are very cute. But but it is interesting about how we there's two films, one of which is very much about misdirection, yet the best misdirections in the other movie. But I think it's reflects Raimi's filmmaking that it was believable
Yeah,
that had happened.
yeah, for sure.
And it didn't just misdirect Herod and his men; it misdirected the audience.
Right.
And
Yeah, a lot of times when they do those kinds of things, you can see it a mile away.
yeah,
But,
Well, I think
yeah.
that to me, like thinking of what clues were there that she wasn't really dead. I think really the only thing was that when she asked the blind boy, "What colors of India ink
Yeah.
do you have?" All colors.
And-
I didn't know
that's
how
a
that was
setup.
going to play
like
out.
Yeah, it's playing. That's basically fair play. Like you've got to have those setups. You can't
Yeah.
just out of nowhere. If
Yeah.
you hadn't have set up the dynamite bed,
Yeah.
no blowing up the town. 'Cause
Right,
it's
right,
like how the crap did the town blow up?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess we can call that Chekhov's bed of dynamite.
yeah. And then the structure for the reason they have it for Act 2, the entire thing for
You mean
Quick and the
gunfight
Dead.
competitions?
the gunfight competition it's because that's what the movie's about. It's like it's about her trying to kill this guy.
Her journey, yeah.
and
and her focus, is just she can't let up. She has to keep going, and then she almost lets up, like when she leaves town, but then comes back and everything. She is that determined, and so it just she has to keep at it if she's going to have the chance to revenge her father's death, which is what you learn finally what it's really about for her.
And it really makes for a contrast with Court and his utter lack of determination, especially since he's determined not to be the guy, and yet he slides back into it. And it would have made it would have made a character handoff to him such a cheat, because it's so unearned that he ends up becoming the one who would gun down
Right.
Herod. There's no there because and I think this is I don't think this is any flaw in Russell Crowe's performance. I think it's exactly how the
he
character should
played
be
the way
played.
it was supposed to. Yeah.
Which is the fact that he didn't as no matter what he felt about Herod corrupting him, he never seemed to be all that angry with me. He just was more disappointed in himself for being corrupted.
I think the emotional tones of these movies is I know nothing about alcohol being LDS, but I could describe Maverick as like a champagne.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And then Quick and the Dead would be a whiskey.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that would sum
very
it up,
hard
I think.
spirit.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe a bit of a rock cut to it. So
Yeah.
I think both of them play on a lot of Western conventions of movie making. So that's interesting to me too, is to have, so the gunfight, two guys out in the street and, the quick draw and everything like that is definitely a very Western convention in filmmaking and all that. And then the poker games, poker tournament, the riverboat, all that in Maverick, they both draw on those things without having to invent anything. But I thought both did a really good job with using those things that we've learned already as a people, that what a Western is or means, and be able to use that venue both in different ways, but, to its strengths.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about that I forgot. The whole premise of Quick and the Dead is so ridiculous. Like, it's just like this entire town that's devoted to gunfights. Within the history of, like, from a historical point of view.
Once a year.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Okay, so from a historical point of view, that's, I don't know, if you were looking at it from a historical thing, you'd be like, yeah, that's ridiculous. But it strikes me as that. Okay, I'm not cutting down on the movie.
Okay.
I'm saying
No. I was going to add something that to me is why it works, but you go.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Clint Eastwood movies, all the famous spaghetti westerns and stuff, had that whole thing going where it's like, it doesn't necessarily make sense, but this is the situation we're in. This is the town that's run by this one guy. This is like, so where anything can kind of happen.
Yeah, it's all in contrivance, but this is very much a contrivance.
Yes, no, I'm not going to say it's
stretched
not.
to its limits, and the way that they do this is, and they pull it off. They set the stage for it of like, this is not a normal Western town. This is one where the lawman's office has been burned down. Clearly, the law has been driven out of town. It's not a town on the map anymore. You've got one guy running it who's the most ruthless bandit you've ever seen. And there we have the little bubble that this film can exist within. And they keep constraining that even more throughout the movie. And they do a masterful job at doing that. Every movie like this is a contrivance.
Yes, I agree.
But this one contrives it to the maximum. As much as the cinematography is contrived and the exaggeration of the clothes and all of that, they stretch it to its limits in this movie. And I'm saying it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
It's like the cartoonization of a Western in the best way possible. So, and then Maverick is just, they do the same thing in Maverick. Like everything is a farce. Like the Indian chief is not a normal Indian chief. He's pretending to be the stereotypical thing. And he's a con just like the other people. It kind of subverts the noble Indian chief trope. And
that goes back to the Duke, which is, in a sense, because he's the one person who's not a con, he is, in effect, a representative of the audience.
Yeah.
Right.
And that he is
well, he wants that Old West that he's been told about.
Mm-hmm. He wants the myth. He wants one of the scenes that stands out for me is where we get introduced to him, where Graham Greene goes up and talks to him. He starts speaking to him in French.
And he's like, no.
Talk Indian.
Yeah.
His idea of Indian is
talk English.
White man.
Yeah.
Maverick is very meta. It's very I don't know if postmodern is the word, but that's probably not it. But it's very 90s-ish, where we've gotten past, like, feels very 70s, very 80s, and each thing feels a part of their time. 90s, I think, got to the point where it's like you're looking back on stuff.
So this is one thing that I actually know of from the Old West or whatever, when people were back east were wanting to hear about the exploits of, Buffalo Bill and all these things, and you started to have these Wild West shows, and they were tremendously popular. And so they would, go and have this arena and have, people, Indians, they hired real Indians come in and ride around and whoop and all that. And they would have, Buffalo Bill and his, all his escapades and everything. That was people just clamoring for more of these tales of what they'd heard of the Wild West. And so I think, there's been a long history of that, of people wanting the freedoms, wanting the glitter, all the things that they'd been taught were what the West was about, versus it's going to be a hard time to make a living out here, which is part of it too.
Yeah.
But that's not what they showed, except as how we can do it type of thing. Like you could go out and kill a bear.
So you're saying that's the way it was advertised at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And both films play upon that. I mean, Maverick is essentially saying it's all an act, and we're just here for your money.
Yeah,
and Quick and the Dead takes it and just turns it up to 11.
It's so much so like that in Maverick that when I was watching it on the second viewing, I'm like, okay, none of this is real. Like I could, like even the real plot points, I didn't know if I could take seriously because everything's fake. It keeps taking down the facade and then putting it back up again, and I don't know.
All the fights are staged. Yeah. They're all trying to, pilfer your wallet by giving you a bit of the fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's do our star ratings. Sarah, since you're the guest, you want to go first?
5 stars for
Maverick.
And the Dead. Oh, Maverick. 4 stars.
Okay, 4 stars. That's
my rating as well. 4 stars. I feel like it's very entertaining. It's a little too light though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, it doesn't make it, if anything, makes it a bit more entertaining.
Yeah. So I was going to give it 3 stars on my first watch, something that's entertaining that you'd watch again, but I think I'll go 4 stars too, because what it does really well.
Yeah, that's my feeling with it too.
It's very enjoyable. Like it's a fun, lighthearted romp of a movie.
It's such a great movie for just kind of dipping in and out. If you have it on the background while you're doing something at home, you can step away from it, come back, and you're in another episode of The Adventures of Brett Maverick.
Doesn't really have a bigger message except magic, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's just a fun little thing.
And maybe a little bit of trust no one. I don't know, but
I wouldn't go that deep with it. But okay. So for Quick and the Dead, we already know Sarah's.
Yeah. 5. Loved it. I mean, it's literally one of my very favorite movies of any genre.
5 stars for me as well. I mean, it's just Sam Raimi. It's weird to say this, but I really feel he's still an underappreciated filmmaker.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that's what you see how he does these films, and they come out and they don't do well, but then they end up becoming these enormously appreciated masterpieces.
Yeah,
I think that's where Quick and the Dead is. I mean,
the master of the cult classic.
Maybe. I think Unforgiven is probably the only film that eclipses it as the Western of the 1990s everyone talks about. I mean, even Maverick it's kind of a film that I don't want to say it's been forgotten, but it's definitely doesn't have that stature that Quick and the Dead enjoys. Yeah,
not to mention that if you Google Maverick, Top Gun Maverick comes up.
Yes,
and
that's true.
You've got to put in Maverick 1994, and even then the Top Gun Maverick comes up. It's a shame. Mm-hmm. That's a great movie, but this is a really good movie too. So, okay, so Quick and the Dead, I'd give. I don't know. It's not one of my favorites. I'll give it.
Well, you don't like the revenge-driven.
I don't like the revenge part. They do it very well, but that's kind of what I don't like about it.
Yeah,
is you have to make the villain so horrendous to justify the brutal killing of him at the end. Right. I just don't like going there. But I'll give it 3.5 just for that reasons. I would give it 4 stars for the filmmaking alone. But it's a good movie. Like I really like it. And I feel like this one's kind of a video game almost of like it's of do you choose the male or the female main character? And if you choose the male one, you get him. And
Well,
that's
maybe part
Yeah.
of the reason I like it as well as I do is it does speak to the female. You know, you
Yeah,
can be
for sure.
strong, you can kick butt, you can, like, whatever you need to do, you can be determined and you can do it, you know, if you need to.
You can avenge your loved ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I mean, and so what you were saying before, too, is that there were not a lot of Westerns where there was any type of female character of that ilk before this movie, I think.
And
it,
how it,
yeah, it does an amazing job at that. And if I were, if I
And
were
that's-
rating it
I'm
just
sure I'm
off of that
taking it
alone,
very
I'd give it 5 stars.
Personally, that
But,
way,
yeah.
like emotionally.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not looking at it as technically, I'm like, I love this movie. I love this character. Who wouldn't, you know,
Right.
but I'm a female, so that's different.
and it kind of inverts the trope there, the stereotype. You take, so many Westerns like The Searchers, where you have the man who is going out avenging the woman.
Right.
And doing it here, it's the reverse. It's the woman who's avenging the man. And she, and it's, testament to Sharon Stone and Sam Raimi that they do such a great job of selling it. It never seems as though she's out of place or isn't
Right.
capable of doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as soon as she's, shows up on the set, it's like, okay, this is someone, I don't know her story yet.
That's a very great sidebar. But what I'm saying with my character,
No, I get
for
it.
Court,
I'm sorry, I get it. I
That
get it.
fascinated me, of a man of faith
Yes.
who's taken this vow of nonviolence.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that he kind of gave it up near the end, but I loved that thing of that tension
Well,
of him. Yeah.
I don't know if he gave
Not
it up
having to
at
do
the
it.
end, but there's always that with a marshal or a sheriff or someone.
Oh yeah, I was
that-
going to mention that. Okay, I do like that. I like how she throws the badge to him at the end, and he becomes the marshal.
Yeah, so
It's
it's,
like
to
you
say
don't-
sometimes you
Yeah.
might have to be violent or kill someone
It's
or
a
put
little bit
someone
of
in
a
jail
balance.
or whatever,
Yeah.
but you have to be a good person to be able to judge between good and evil,
Right.
I think, too.
Or maybe you have to be a former bad person who really can tell the difference.
Well,
between the
that too. Sure enough, there's always both sides.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, so they did exactly what I would have done for his character. So it is kind of a choose your main character movie. But yeah,
Want to revise the rating then?
yeah, I'll bump it up to a 4. I do like that. So it's not just about the getting bloodlust of revenge. So
No, because she, I think one of the things in the movie is when she went to leave town and everything, she's like, I don't even know how you people can live, like you do. I don't want any more to do with this. So she was, she's had all that determination. Like, think of it. So since she was a little kid, her whole life or her formative years, what did she start doing? She started learning how to shoot. She started, being able to take care of herself, watch her back, all those things, with the idea of being able to avenge her father's death.
yeah,
Right. So it's not just because she likes killing.
We've covered a movie that features just such an arc. His name was Inigo Montoya.
oh yeah, yes. That's a much lighter one though. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It shows you how you can tell the same basic type of story and tone. Like
It's
come
kind of
across
got that
differently.
fairy tale gloss over
Yes.
it. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah, you guys bumped me up to a 4. So
Woohoo!
Cool.
think we can work on to get it up to 4.5.
I don't know. It's just not a favorite for me. So it's not in the 5-star slot that it is for Sarah.
Yeah.
There's other ones that would be reversed for that. So our next episode will be Man for All Seasons. Sorry, this is a nerdy one, but it's good. You should watch these movies. That's why we do it. So Man for All Seasons and Hacksaw Ridge. And that will be with our guest Cameron Provo, who was the sound designer on Time Haunt. So
Cool.
yeah. If you like today's episode and you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips, as well as from our show Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRANSCEND Entertainment. And that's it for today's episode of the Crisscross Cinema Podcast.
But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.